I think just to maybe even keep it pretty simple, and I know that loans are something that this committee has voiced as a positive and can be very helpful. I'd be happy to just kind of talk through those or answer any questions you have on the loan programs we have. We have a number of different loan programs, each intended to solve a little bit of a different problem. We do have at least one loan program on the books that is it's not been used much. It's only been used once, and it's probably a sort of a relic based on the technology that it was built on. That's the natural gas loan program, which was for natural gas refueling stations. And I don't know if that's going to come back. I don't know what the deal was, but it was that was done once. That loan has been repaid. We don't see any interest in it. As long as we're pruning things, that might be something we take a look at. But again, we'll work through that minerals with that. Just by and large, the loan programs fill a gap that typical banking doesn't fill. So we're not competing with banks in this situation or these situations. We're actually working in partnership with the banks, and we're sort of covering a part of the loan that they would not feel comfortable, whether it be from regulations that they face or from their own banking rules, but yet are a problem in our community. So I'm happy to walk through any of those or talk through that if the committee has questions.
Mr. Chairman, not specifically on these loan programs. I do have questions on prior loans that were made out to, I'm looking more toward the ag community. I looked at 24 fiscal report, and there's some that you decided that they're just gonna not try to collect from them, and it totaled quite a bit. And just a little response. Maybe you can tell us your procedures on that. That concerns me that we had some ag producers that didn't pay back what they should have.
Yep. Mr. Drew. Mr. Chairman, Senator Larson, so that is correct. We have had to write off at least one economic disaster loan. I believe it was for that canal collapse in southeast Wyoming, that particular one. We do have some others that are in collections right now. So we typically do essentially an industry standard for banking collection methodology, where we reach out, we work to work with the person who has the loan to work out a schedule that will work for them, and again we employ the same kind of collection techniques that a bank would. In many cases, we utilize a collection service to do that. In those rare cases where we have to write off a loan, that goes before our board of directors, and we take a vote on that. And again, by and large, the people of Wyoming do a good job of repaying those debts. However, there have been instances where we've had to chase it a little bit or write that one off. But that's a good question. Thank you.
Bullet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was listening a few days ago when you were at Minerals, and Representative J.T. Larson asked a question that actually didn't get an answer. There was the way the thing went, no one was really allowed to respond. And so I would like to offer that question again and hear your response. But basically what he says is, Glen Rock benefited from this program. Of course, Douglas being in the near area, this was what the conversation was about. Representative Campbell had some comments. And Representative J.T. Larson's question was, well, what do we do about, he says, Rock Springs would like to have, Rawlins would like to have this, and he starts listing other communities. And I just, what's the answer to that? If there's not enough money to give it to everybody, how do we pare that down? How do we select? What's the criteria for how worthy a community is? Or is it more how ready? Anyway, if you'd expound on that just a little bit. That was
Mr. Drill?
Representative Larson's question that I just wanted to hear an answer to.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Pendergraft, I'll answer, I think what the question is, maybe is a really good segue into Business Ready Communities program. Because I think the topic is how does a community engage with the Business Council to utilize our community, our program called Business Ready Communities, okay? And I think that it's important to note that the Business Ready Communities program is primarily focused on economic growth. So what are the barriers to growth that a community sees? What are the opportunities that it sees as well? And how do we remove those barriers so that a community can take advantage of the opportunities? Okay. So when I think about infrastructure funding, I think about it in two ways. One is how do we maintain and keep the infrastructure that a community has without growth? You could think about consensus in that way. It's like, how do we maintain what's going on here in this community so that its current residents are taken care of? Okay. But then there's this other element, and that's the funding for growth. And that's what Business Ready Communities is all about, is how do we remove a barrier for growth? So I think the question you're asking is, how do we choose which community gets Business Ready Communities funding? And the answer is we don't. At least not, we don't go and say, well, we see that Rock Springs should get some money to fix this thing because there's growth coming. We don't do that kind of central planning. What we do is we let local control determine, and we work with them to say, what are the opportunities that you have? What are the barriers for growth that you have? But that really all starts at that local level. And so I'll give you an example. I'll use an example. Maybe it's not Rock Springs or Rollins here, but maybe it's in Laramie or Cheyenne. They might say, hey, we are experiencing these economic growth challenges that we want to tackle. And so they'll work on that with their regional director or even on their own, and they will engage in the application process for Business Ready Communities as a potential funding mechanism to remove that barrier for growth. And so there was a housing project in Cheyenne that is becoming pretty famous right now because it was worked on for months and months and months. And it's actually been years and years and years that the mayor has worked on this problem. Came to us, worked through that process. We didn't make it easy on him. I can tell you, I guarantee if he testifies, he's going to say they're tough to work with because there's a lot of standards, there's a lot of rules, there's a lot of things that we got to work on. And then it got to the spot where SLIB decided that it wasn't a good project. And again, that's what Dr. Schaefer mentioned earlier. But that all starts at the local level. And we assist and help out through that process, but ultimately the communities pick themselves to work on a barrier to growth, and we help assist them in potentially funding the removal of that barrier. So it might be water or sewer, as it was in Evansville, to unlock that industrial park so that Mesa could build their new manufacturing facility there. It might be something in Sheridan where we're looking at the high-tech business park. The community starts that. We don't choose them; they choose themselves. So I think it's really important, and it's an important distinction that I think gets missed sometimes, is that we're down there sort of picking and choosing communities to put money in and deciding that for people. It starts at the local level. I think that's where, and again, Dr. Schaefer touched on this, that regional approach is going to be really important. That regional planning piece is what almost every state in the nation except Wyoming does. So they have economic development districts in almost every other state in the nation. We'd like to have that here, where the region understands its assets and maybe its challenges, its strengths and weaknesses, and says, what do we have in terms of opportunities that we can take advantage of? And that regional planning component will feed into both consensus grants to make sure that the infrastructure is ready, or new development with BRC. That regional planning is going to be key to that. Again, we have resources that are available for that regional planning in terms of money to get the regional planning done, but also in facilitation to help communities do that. So I think the question was probably an indication that there's a little bit of a misunderstanding of how we work. It starts at the local level. It always does. And then we help try to facilitate it and get it across the finish line.
Go ahead, follow up.
Thank you. So you mentioned the county consensus grants, and that's kind of where I'm going. Could you maybe differentiate between what you do and how the county consensus grants have gone in the past? And from your perspective, what's the advantage of having the Wyoming Business Council do that as opposed to just having the application process?
Mr. Durrell?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Pendergraft. So I would say that they're both really important. I think that the distinction is that the Wyoming Business Council, and it's laid out in our statute, is about economic growth. And it's not about like keeping what we have the same. It's about removing barriers to growth and growing that economy. So I think the distinction is actually really simple, and both are important. I don't know about the consensus funding because it predates me. I do think it would be important to go back to the days of consensus grant and understand why over $250 million was allotted for a biennium, yet we still face these infrastructure challenges that we're talking about. That's a lot. It seems like a lot of money, right? So how do we take advantage of both of those programs to get where we want to go? Again, that distinction is what we have today versus how we want to grow in the future. And that's the distinction. Like in terms of as Representative Harrelson earlier said, we sometimes get saddled with programs that maybe don't make sense. I can tell you right now, my team does not fully understand the infrastructure at a current community like their county commissioners and mayors and people on the ground. There's just no way. And I don't think we even want to, because that is their job. They're doing a good job of understanding the challenges there. Where we can fit in is in that growth part. How do we make sure that you're ready for growth, or how do we take advantage of an opportunity for growth? And that those two things should work hand in glove.
Representative Alamand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On your loan programs, do you take collateral and collateral enough to cover the loan? And if you do, is it a first mortgage on that collateral, or does the bank have to be satisfied before you can ever receive anything?
Mr. Durrell?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Alamand, I believe the bank takes the first position on that.
Follow up, go ahead.
Thank you. So the state of Wyoming receives nothing until the bank is satisfied. Is that correct?
Mr. Durrell?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Alamand, these are participation loans, and it's not that we don't receive anything until they're fully satisfied. We participate on that loan, but in terms of positions, the bank tends to take a first position on the collateral.
Okay. Senator Guru?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Josh, question I have is, since in the time you've been there, and we know since '97 there's all these regs and stuff in statutes about what you've done, things that have probably long since gone. Talk to me about, give me 3 examples of programs that have been passed since that were there that you don't use, that the Business Council kind of has. We don't even do that anymore. And then talk about maybe 1 or 2 things that maybe didn't get used then that you're using now and that are more effective, and the reasons why.
Mr. Durrell?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Guru, I'll give you a couple examples of programs that we no longer do that we actually transitioned to other entities. The Community Development Block Grant, we transitioned that from our charge to the Wyoming Community Development Authority. I believe that we did that and kind of got all of that squared away in 2023 was the date that was taken care of. I can double check my notes here to find out. We also transitioned the state energy program to the Wyoming Energy Authority because again, it fit their mission better than ours. And then we have a number of programs, things like the Premium Heifer program that we stopped doing because it didn't necessarily move the needle economically, and things like trade show incentive grants. We've transitioned or changed or gotten rid of a lot of programs during my time just because they don't make sense. We've added some programs back. As I mentioned, we restarted Kickstart because we saw that gap. And then YVC, as we talked about earlier, was something that we started as a result of understanding the entrepreneurial ecosystem and funding challenges that were there. Did that answer your question, or did I not get enough examples? Because I could dive deep into it if you want, like.
Now that helps. If Mr. Chairman, if I can have a follow-up.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Also before lunch, and I got a little confused, and that happens to me a lot, so not too surprising to anybody in the room. We were talking about the broadband deal, and we were talking about, well, you got X $100 million to do the program, and you got 53,000 connections, and then you do the math against the whole 100 million, but I don't think you spent the whole 100 million, and so you had a different number. Can you help clear that up for me? How much money did we get in that program? How much money is still there? How many connections have we achieved? And how much per, relatively speaking, per connection? And you can, I don't need the exact numbers, but I was just a little bit confused during that testimony.
Mr. Drill.
Mr. Chairman and Senator Guru, I'm going to have my team is just now going to do the math on the exact amount that will have been allotted in both the Capital Projects Fund as well as the BEAD program. But I can tell you that in the Capital Projects Fund, the cost per location overall was $4,877 per BSL, or broadband serviceable location. And in BEAD, that number was 5,109 per BSL. So you can essentially think of it as about $5,000 per location for those 53,000 locations. So if we do that math, what does that end up being? About $270 million total. Oh, and here it is, 70.5 for CPF million and 198 million for BEAD. So that quick math worked out.
Okay, if I could, just one last to help me gauge that. So, okay, so you do that, and it sounds like a big number, but yet it's like the pharmaceutical company that developed aspirin. The first pill cost $20 million, but now they've done, 200 billion pills later, the cost is down to where it is. So the life expectancy of those connections is what? So that $5,000 per unit, how does that play out? Is that going to give me 20 years worth of connectivity? And I know the technology is changing all the time, but how do you gauge that? How do you measure that?
Mr. Drill.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Guru, I believe that the performance period is at least 10 years, but I think we can all appreciate that, the fiber that we've put in the ground maybe 20 or 30 years ago is still being utilized today. Obviously, the technology does increase in what you can send down that fiber, and also the fiber itself, that technology increases. But it looks like it is 20 years, 20 years on fiber installs is how long the performance period that the federal government is requiring. One other thing that I do want to mention there, Senator Guru, on that whole thing is that these grants that go to the private providers to put the technology in place, that comes with a match. So there was actually $52 million of private match from the providers in Wyoming, alongside that 270 million. So it's a big number for the infrastructure that we're putting in.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And that's all I was trying to get at, was just, sometimes you give a number and it sounds one way, but you got to kind of play it all the way out. And I think then it comes out a little bit different. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Haroldson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know we're tight on time, but I wanted to circle back around. You talked about a regional conversation. We're the only state not regional. One thing I'd push back on that. So in 97, what this whole conversation was, go and identify what we have to offer, right? I mean, you don't know how to paint the picture until you know what's on the palette. Well, I think that's what we're dealing with in the state is what's on the palette. We got a rail spur, we got extra power, we've got we got high flow water here. Like knowing what's on the palette is incredibly important. And so when I look at some of these, like the BRC and some of these funding sources, when you kind of almost have this attitude like, well, we really don't know what's out there. Well, that's not acceptable. I'm sorry, it isn't. Because I mean, you should know everything in Platte County. You guys have been around since 97. You should know everything Platte County has to offer. But I actually sat down with a business that's looking at putting a processing plant, and I was telling them stuff that they didn't get. Well, how? How in the world is that, you guys? Like, that's not who I am. That's not my job. But we drove around and he's like, we did 6 months worth of work in 4 hours in a minivan having a conversation. And I'm sitting there going, why is it that we sit there, well, we need to be regional. Well, how many people do we need? You guys kind of have a leeway of putting, a substantial amount of people on that payroll. And I guess this is the frustration I have is we've been throwing a lot of money for a lot of years at these issues. And I almost have this attitude of like, well, we're in the dark. Well, if we need to go regional to get into the light, I ask the question, aren't we regional already? Maybe we don't have a name next to it, but I think we have all reality of being regional. Okay, maybe we don't have one in the Bighorn Basin. But technically, Platte County's got one. I haven't met the person yet, but we have one. And so I asked that question, where's regional and what does it look like? And then the second is this, and I know you can't give me this right now, but I want you to give me a breakdown of how much each county has received from BRC and breaking down kind of is that true infrastructure. When I say infrastructure, like water, sewer, curb, gutter, electrical, that type of infrastructure, not daycare or housing or anything like that. Obviously, I know you guys don't do housing, but, and then how much is that business? So, and I don't need that numbers now, but just if you could get that to me, that'd be amazing. But if you could answer that idea of this regional, because when you said that, honestly, it struck a chord a little bit that frustrated me.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Haraldson, I think we could all feel your frustration. It was well voiced. However, you're taking it out of context. And so it's not that we don't know anything that's going on. I think if you were to read the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, you would know that we have done a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis for the entire state. We do have regional directors that are statutorily required in 6 regions across the state. We do work with the economic development organizations and the communities in each of those areas. Thank you for driving a processing plant around. That's fantastic. I appreciate that effort. And all of the information that you asked for is available on our website to the public, readily available by county. I'm happy to send you that link.
Follow up?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You just said we weren't regional, but then you just said we were regional. Could you clarify that, please?
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, so contextually, follow along here. We have regional directors. What we're asking for are regional economic development plans so that it is not just one community or a county, yet it's a region of people coming together to develop a plan, which should fit nicely into this idea of consensus, since generally speaking, consensus would require people to work together and come up with a plan. That doesn't happen right now. So we have regional directors, we work in regions, we understand the assets in a region. However, there are no regional economic development plans today. Did that clear it up?
Mr. Chairman, just real quick. So is that, so let me hear this correctly. Are you saying you need statutory, so when you say we need to go regional, is that within your guys' purview to make that reality? Or is that something we need to be doing to make that reality?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Haraldson, it is totally possible with the funding mechanisms that we have today. It is totally possible with the staff we have today. It is totally dependent upon those regions getting together and working together to do that. And when I say those regions, I don't mean our regional directors. I mean those regions working together. That's it. So there are no barriers to making that happen.
Dr. Schaefer, would you like to add?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and Representative Harrelson. I'll try to make this connection because I feel your frustration. We've heard this locally as well. Here's the way I would couch it. We are caught between this cultural belief and deep-rooted connection to local control. And there seems to be a lot of hesitation to try to prescribe an economic development approach for any community to come into Wheatland and say, this is what you should do. And at times when we try to do that, there is some of that pushback. The flip side of it is our local communities don't necessarily have the depth, the resources, the capacity, let alone the training to know exactly what they should be doing with the assets that they have. And so in some ways, there's this arm's length, weird sort of relationship that happens. You know, we want to help, we know we can help, but we don't want to get too much because then you'll say, get out of our business. The community wants to have local control. This is our idea, you know, but yet we need help. I mean, when Representative Harrelson has to drive a prospect around, there's a disconnect there. What our hope is with the regional planning is we can kind of marry those two. So we're saying, great, we want to leverage the autonomy, the interest of these local regions. We recognize that probably one of the best things we could do is get regions, at least counties, to start working together, help you identify and articulate your vision, your belief, your community, connect that then to a broader state agenda and try to close that gap. But that gap seems to be that the lack of understanding of us, who should be doing what. And that's usually where the angst happens, is like you probably felt, why isn't the business council doing this, right? And where the business council comes too far and they say, no, this is what we want our local economic development group to do or whatever it is. So the frustration is real. And I think that's what we're trying to do. What we're trying to say is, so then let's come together. Let's codify this in plans that we will look at, we will advise, you will help develop so that it's clear what we have, what we want to do, and ultimately who can step in with what resources to accomplish that. So that's at least been the board's thinking of why we want to push forward this nature. We have a regional service provision construct. What we lack is a regional planning construct to accommodate that. So, Mr. Chairman, Representative, I hope that kind of helps clarify. But we understand the frustration.
Okay. Let's continue.
Mr. Chairman, unless you all would like to take a deep dive into to our Business Ready Communities program, I think that we might try to get us back on schedule.
Okay, I appreciate that. Is there anybody that'd like to ask a question about the BRC program? Senator Larson. Well, go ahead with your question. I'll go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm going to go back to what Representative Harrelson was discussing and how the communities and the regions work together. But I see on your webpage that at one point you had listings of property, commercial property that might be available. I don't know if that's something I would think that you should be doing. I don't know, but I'm sure, or hopefully, that is a discussion you're having. Is that realtors that ought to be taking that on and you just have a direction to them or what? But I see it's not there today on your webpage, so wondered what might have happened to it.
Mr. Drew?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Larson, I think you just nailed it. We realize that that's probably not what we should be doing.
All right. Any questions on BRC? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to your strategic partners. Thank you for wrapping it up quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, let's go ahead and bring up strategic partners. We have those here today. Okay. So we should be having the Business Resource Network, Manufacturing Works, Wyoming Women's Business Center, Startup Wyoming, several of them here. Come on up and fill the seats. Welcome to Joint Appropriations Committee. Please introduce yourself and proceed.
Start. Good.
I don't think your microphone's working. It should light up green.
Oh, it was already on. Sorry, I turned it off. Mr. Chairman, committee members, thank you for having us this afternoon. My name is Jill Klein. I'm the State Director for the Wyoming Small Business Development Center Network. The network consists of 4 programs, well, and a supplemental program right at this moment in time. The Small Business Development Center, I like to call it the umbrella program. It's been around in the University of Wyoming, hosted by the University of Wyoming since 1994. And we are federally funded by the Small Business Administration, which requires a dollar-for-dollar cash match. They expect the states to invest in their entrepreneurs as well. But through the SBDC, we have a variety of categories the Small Business Administration wants us to assist individuals and entrepreneurs or small businesses with. So from those categories, we have brought on in what's called the Apex Accelerator now, formerly called the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, which focuses and assists individuals on government contracting opportunities at the federal, regional, county, local level. We also have a Market Research Center, which is in state statute and also required by the Small Business Administration to provide competitive intelligence to the individuals we're working with. So we have that program as well. And then finally, we have the Wyoming SBIR STTR initiative, Small Business Innovation Research Program, that helps individual businesses who want to compete with one of the 11 federal agencies that participate in the SBIR program to bring their idea to a commercialized state. And so we have staff who assists with those programs. It's a competitive program at the federal level. So we have the Phase 0 program and Phase 00 program that will assist them in getting the assistance they need to be able to compete. And since we started that program in 1998, I actually ran that program from 2000 to 2006. But that gets individuals ready, and hopefully they win a Phase 1 from one of those federal agencies. And then as they move forward, that's when they could get into the SBIR matching grant that the Business Council manages and really helps those businesses take off. So it gives them credibility and going through our program as well as the award, so they can find other financing for their idea, because banks don't want to finance somebody who has an idea that maybe can get to commercialization. So that's really popular. We also currently have the cybersecurity for small business programs. That's also an SBA federally funded, no cash match required program that will sunset this August. And of course, you probably all understand the necessity of having cybersecure even at the smallest level or the lowest level of the business and individual that may have personal information that they do not want shared or hacked into. So we have actually our entire staff is cyber educated, and we have some certifications. We're doing the same with AI at this moment in time and have had some federal funding, or actually some Google funding, who have provided our staff with training. We have 7 SBDC representatives scattered across the state, strategically across the state, so we can serve every community in the state. We are boots on the ground. We start with any individual who comes to us, or we meet that has an idea that would like to start a business, and they want to look at viability all the way to exit planning or transitioning and everything in between. So your constituents probably have worked with us at some stage of the game if they're in business, or many of them have. And we like to work with them for the life of their business, because as they grow, they may need government contracting, or if they want to expand, they may need some of that market research. We have access to databases where we can get them industry-specific information that will help educate them or make educated decisions for their business. And if they've got an innovative idea, we're there to assist with the SBIR program or some of those other programs. I think Mr. Durrell alluded to the fact that, hey, there's other entities that we could support, that it's not just SBIR, that could use some of those funding opportunities. So from the dog groomer to an innovative business like Uplink Robotics or any one of those, we have services that support those individuals, and we work very closely with our partners, Manufacturing Works, Women's Business Center. I don't think Shaylee's here. And of course, we work very closely with the Wyoming Business Council because they are the pass-through where we get our state funding that's required for at least SBDC requires match, and our Apex Accelerator, sorry about that, requires match. Apex Accelerator is federally funded by the Department of Defense Office of Small Business Programs. And there's a lot of hoops, as you might guess, to doing business with the government, the federal government, even local or state government. So we are there to help businesses get all those registrations done correctly, because if it's set up in the beginning correctly, it makes their life much easier. It's harder to unravel where the issues are if they've done in something as simple as put L.C. versus LLC. And it has to, everything has to match across the board. So it's it can get very in the weeds with those individuals. Happy to answer any questions about what we do. I do have what we normally, this is 2025 federal fiscal year numbers, and I'll leave these with you. And you have received them electronically when this first came out. But last year alone, we served over 1,000 clients, just for the SBDC now I'm talking. But during COVID years, it was well over 2,000 clients, and it varies from year to year from 1,000 to 1,500, depending upon what's happening in the year. And certainly there are other resources out there now since I've been with this program. We track capital infusion, which means we've assisted individuals in getting loans or guarantees or whatever, bringing capital into their business through banks, what have you, or their own investments. We cannot report anything that we don't have written attribution from our clients saying, hey, because of the work we did together, I was able to get that loan, or I was able to start that business, or I was able to hire those additional employees. So we're under strict guidelines and have to demonstrate that, yeah, they said, and we get audited on an annual basis or reviewed on an annual basis by the federal SBA. And so we demonstrate our work. Other things we've done for government contracting over just in FY25, over $69 million assistance in obtaining government contracts across the state. Other metrics, I mean, we track jobs supported. Now that's kind of an interesting number. Over 3,000 between all of our programs, 3,000 jobs supported. So that means with the businesses we worked with, over 3,000 employees were hopefully kept their job or were hired. We do training events so that we can do group and be efficient. And that's also a lead generator. So if somebody's interested in potentially starting a business, they can step into a start your own business class and say, wow, okay, I'm interested. Let me get more in-depth information. Or, ooh, wow, I didn't know I'd have to get my own insurance or put my own money in, all of those things. So that's an important aspect of our work as well. Yeah, and so just over about 1,000 individuals trained through workshops and training as well as what we do individually. We have over time, since I've been in a leadership role, I tracked our funding. And since 2012, we have gone from the state funding from $806,000 per year down to about $679,000. And that makes it difficult for that dollar-to-dollar match, but we wind up using what's called waived indirect costs. That's money that the university gets as the host, which we get some of that money back, but we can use that as match. matching funds so that we can meet the requirements. We don't want to leave any of that federal money on the table because that's bringing, just from the federal money we bring in, we're creating jobs to help our own communities. I could go on all day. There are plenty of, or not plenty, there are several success stories in here. We have those on our website. We keep our website up to date with new successes that come through. A lot of individual, testimonials. What we love to hear is, we wouldn't be here without you. We just had a client receive a Better Business Award, an ethics award from the Better Business Bureau through the Better Business Bureau supporting that, but she gave a shout out to the SBDC network that, hey, I wouldn't be where I am today with that. And we get that all of the time. One thing I do want to point out is the folks that come to us typically have a skill or I have identified a need in their community, but they don't have that business background. They don't know, hey, what do I do to get to where I can open a store or provide this service? But they have that skill. They just don't have that business background. And we'll work with them from the day they want to start until the day they want to sell that business or exit that business. So we're with them for the life of their business. Our services are offered at no cost and confidentially. We are under a federal statute that requires client confidentiality because we see personal information that's, they don't want spread out all across the state. I'll stop there, I guess. Any questions?
Klein, thank you
Yeah.
for being here and appreciate that presentation. So we'll go ahead and open it up to questions. Representative Pendergraft.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see a list of here are 5 strategic partners to the Wyoming Business Council. And what I wonder is when you have similar organizations working, do you see in your own organization or in other organizations a certain amount of mission creep? Is there overlap where you think maybe we're duplicating some efforts in any or more entities out there? And do you have an open communication with the other ones? Do you commonly work with each other? How's just a little bit of the background, if I could?
All right, thank you for that question, Ms. Representative Pendergraft and Mr. Chairman. Yes, we make it our business to know what all these other resources have to offer. And our mantra within our own organization is keep the best interest of the client in mind and get them to the resource that can help them best at this moment in time. If it's us, great. And if it's internally, because we do have 4 programs, great, we'll start there. But we have a very close relationship with the Women's Business Center and Manufacturing Works and the Wyoming Business Council, Workforce Services. We're aware of all the services that an individual may need just to, operate a business. And we'll make sure if they're willing, we don't do the work for them. We train, educate, and guide and act as an advisory board member. They can come back and forth to us with as many questions as they might have, but we make referrals back and forth all of the time. There's probably some slight overlap. For example, we work with manufacturers, but we don't do the manufacturing work that Manufacturing Works does. So we're very complementary and we do our best to complement each other versus compete. I hope that helps.
Other questions? Ms. Klein, could you talk about incubation centers? I mean, I think that's underneath your purview, isn't it?
It is not,
It's
but I
not.
can talk a little bit about that because we work very closely with incubators as well. The university, of course, has Wyoming, Impact 307, which focuses on faculty inventions or faculty spinouts. So we work closely with them and we offer them the same services we offer anybody. One of our, in Gillette, I'll use that as an example. Our office is located in Campbell County Economic Development Office. So our representative there, PJ Burns, works with those individuals and supports those efforts. And we have relationships across the state with any other incubators that exist.
Go ahead, Senator Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Guess I have a question and now I can't remember what it was. Horrible.
Yeah, cut that from me. While you're working on that, I'll just ask you, you talked about being able to refer between these other partners. Does that also work well with the Wyoming Business Council? I'll give you an example. I had a company that discussed with me that they had won one of the Kickstart awards, and then they wanted to work on a patent.
Mhm.
And they went to the Wyoming Business Council and really weren't getting answers there, and that's where it ended. But I'm curious if the Wyoming Business Council would routinely send that type of a person to you or to one of your other partners to help them figure out how to get started getting a patent.
Yes, yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. We do work very closely with the Business Council. Again, we get clients who come in and are really talking about community development versus, an individual business, and we'll make that referral to the Business Council and vice versa. So if in that case, whoever that individual was, probably came to us, probably got connected with Kelly Hagler Cornish, who runs our SBIR, STTR initiative. And if Kelly couldn't guide them, we have another member on board, Monica Patton, who actually has a lot of intellectual property background and frequently assists individuals. We don't have money or anything, but we can guide them in the process and help them determine or find information that will determine whether, hey, should you move forward with this patent or not? We don't make those decisions. It's always up to the individual as to whether, because that's a very expensive process. So it's, if it's another barbecue sauce, that's not a patent. Maybe let's get a trademark or a secret, what is it called? Well, the secret sauce, so to speak.
Protect that.
Yeah,
intellectual
protect that.
property.
Right.
So in this case, they didn't get that answer, when they didn't get moved on to you. Do you have regional offices?
We do.
Or you just one?
No, we
So
have
you're all
regional
over the
offices.
states, okay.
Yes. Gillette is a home base that serves East Wyoming. Powell, we have a office there that serves Northwest Wyoming. We have an office in Rock Springs and Casper, Cheyenne, Laramie does Albany and Carbon County. Cheyenne does other southern parts. So yeah, we have 7 regional directors that are strategically placed across the state where it makes sense.
More, but I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Senator Larson while I can remember.
It's tough. I remember now. You'd mentioned that you're getting around 680,000 from the state.
Correct.
For your program. What kind of federal dollars are you bringing in and using?
Mhm.
Ms.
And
Klein?
then I have a follow-up.
We receive for just SBDC alone, 800 this year in this current, and that's another thing. We have to report on the federal fiscal year, October through September, but our funding year is a calendar year, January through December. And this year we are at $833,333. So 833,333. Last year, and what's projected for next fiscal year is $777,777.
Oh,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you for that. Do you work with low-income housing apartments, try to get dollars? Is that a
That is-
program that you work
But
on?
it's not in our purview, no.
Okay.
Thank you.
is there other questions? Okay. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us, Chairman and Committee. Rocky Case, I'm the Center Director of Manufacturing Works at the University of Wyoming, and we are the Manufacturing Extension Partnership in the state. I gotta sit back. Here we go. Leaning forward isn't good on my back. MEP is funded out of the Department of Commerce and through the National Institute of Standards and Technology. And within there is MEP. And each state plus Puerto Rico has a unit like ours. And our charge is simply to help small and medium manufacturers do what they do better, be more efficient, more profitable, more competitive, diversify markets outside of what they might be doing today, all the kind of things. I like to say, let's spill out all the things that are going in on a manufacturing shop floor and pick the ones that are working. Let's not deal with those. If it's broken and not working within your shop, let's help you fix it. That could be as simple as you have somebody that needs to learn or brush up on an Excel spreadsheet, or it could be as complicated as we want to begin participating in the supply chain for nuclear energy, which would require an NQA1 certification, anywhere in between. And how do we go about that? So from a budget perspective, I get 706.9 on the Fed and 706.9 on the state on the annual. With those dollars, there's no way that I can hire an expert in every one of the fields that we support, which would be quality management, automation, lean, additive manufacturing, cybersecurity, and I'm going to talk about the overlap on cybersecurity here in a minute, AI, emerging manufacturing technologies, and all of the things. So we partner with our MEPs throughout the U.S. as well as vetted third-party vendors to bring those resources in state to help those manufacturers solve those problems that they're dealing with on the daily. We do have internal deliverables in the areas of lean, cybersecurity, tangentially similar to what Jill is doing, but we attempt not to overlap. So there are some criteria that manufacturers that participate in DoD require a CMMC certification. I don't think that you all play directly in that space. But anyway, we talk frequently to know where the overlap is and make sure we're not crossing skis. So we have offices in Green River, Riverton, Cheyenne, Laramie, and Sheridan right now. Casper is an opening. I've had to have that position open for a little over a year now due to some budgetary hiccups on the federal side. And like Jill, I could go on and on. We do have measured deliverables that we are held accountable to on the federal side, and they are, did the services we offered, did the services we did translate to new sales, retained sales, jobs created, new investment, cost savings, and did we serve a minimum number of clients per $1 million Fed spent that they require? And happy to report that we're north of 100% of threshold on every single one of those on a quarter-over-quarter basis for the last probably 3.5, 4 years. So we've got a pretty strong performing team, pretty proud of that. And I guess with that, I will stand for questions.
Questions for Mr. Case? Mr. Case, there's been in the news where Elon Musk has stated that robotics is going to be impactful on manufacturing, and it's going to be a problem for people, putting people out of jobs. But I'm curious, in a state where we don't have a large workforce, are you seeing robotics as a potential manufacturing methodology in Wyoming that we should be going after, that we should be enticing businesses that want to get into robotic manufacturing to come into Wyoming, where we've got low-cost energy, but we don't have a big workforce?
Is your question whether we should be making robots in Wyoming or whether we should be
No.
deploying them on factory floors?
Deploying them on factory floors.
Okay, there's a facility in Riverton that is almost running 24/7 dark right now. So to answer your question, yes. When it comes to workforce, robots, automation, AI, all of these things have a place. But Elon Musk also said in that same statement that we would be replaced by them and we'd need some minimum viable income because we wouldn't be needed to work anymore. And I would suggest that 100 years ago, 80% of our workforce was directly related to agriculture, and that's not the case anymore. But generally speaking, by and large, those that want to work have a job today. So
well said. Well said. As we see the federal government and attempting things like tariffs and things like that to bring manufacturing back to the United States, can Wyoming set itself apart because we've got the ability to do this robotics without a business owner being concerned about putting people out on the streets. Are we a good landing spot for robotic manufacturing? And as a follow-up to that, what does our workforce look like as far as maintaining robotics in manufacturing? Do we have the training available in the state right now to provide, you know, a manufacturer with people that can maintain those robotics?
It's a good question, and I would say in some instances that factories are doing it on their own. Those that have either are beginning to automate or have fully automated or are, you know, contemplating automation, or they probably have talented staff in house to do that. You know, I would say it's probably a brilliant career track for somebody to get trained up in that right now, because automation is going to be taking the place of repetitive, low value tasks on factory floors and otherwise. So to answer your question, it's a mixed bag, and it depends on the sophistication of the company that we're talking about. But I would think that it would definitely be a good career track and a high paying one for folks to consider as they're going into careers.
I mentioned this, Mr. Case, because one of the directives for the Wyoming Business Council back in 1997 was really to go after more manufacturing for the state. And back in 1996, we were ranked 48th out of 50 states as far as having manufacturing jobs available. And today we're still 48th out of 50 states. So I'm curious, is there opportunity for the Wyoming Business Council to go out there and find manufacturing? Is Wyoming a good landing spot for robotic style manufacturing? I think I'm hearing from you that if the workforce wants to go there, there's huge opportunity. But is it because there's going to be jobs in Wyoming for manufacturing? From your perspective, if you could prognosticate.
Well, yeah, that's kind of a crystal ball question, right? But I think Dr. Schaefer said something along the lines earlier, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that was, or it might have been Josh Durrell. It doesn't matter. Is recruitment? Can we recruit fast enough manufacturing companies to Wyoming and have the workforce to have it become 44th or 30th or otherwise? The answer to that is no, right? But I will add that, and I haven't run 2025 numbers yet, but 23 to 24, the manufacturing industry in Wyoming did grow from 4.8% of state product to 6.5% of state product, and is now the 6th largest contributor. And I suspect 2025 numbers will grow as well. So is manufacturing in Wyoming a stable industry with good jobs? Yes. Should we recruit? Yes, absolutely. Are we going to recruit to a level where it's going to shift the needle? No. And if we did, who's going to work there other than robots?
So with that comment, just looking at the manufacturing landscape in the world today, what do you see robotics as far as really moving us forward? What percentages of the manufacturing world is going to go into robotics? Because not all of it can, obviously. There's going to be some that just labor is just required, but where's it headed as far as the percentages of businesses in manufacturing that rely on robotics?
I would want to do some research to get you an accurate number, because I would really be guessing right now. But I will say that there are a handful of folks and myself that have been talking. When the time is right, we want to purchase fleets of autonomous robots and rent them out, because we think there's a revenue stream there.
Okay, thank you.
You also have a math problem on the babies versus death things, right? For the next 18 and 20
Right.
years, nationwide, we're losing more people to the workforce than we're gaining, just by pure biologics. And that's something that we can't change. So automation and robotics and AI and a number of these things are going to have a place. But I also do believe that those that want a job are going to continue to have a job. Think of it as alignment. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Human in the loop is necessary with all of these things.
Agreed. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Representative Sherwood.
Mr. Chairman, because I can't help myself. I'd like the record to note that the idea for bear bots was formed in Rollins, Wyoming.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind.
Go ahead, Ms. Klein.
You know, much of the work through SBIR that over the years, we've had robotic companies participate in that and wound up with SBIR awards from either DOD, well, any one of the 11 federal agencies, NSF, DOD, whichever one, it doesn't matter. There have been opportunities growing in Wyoming around robotics since I started, so.
Thank you for that. Okay. Any additional comments, questions? Right. Thank you. And I guess I was informed that the representative for the Wyoming Business Center is not available today, but will be at a follow-up meeting in the future. So if there's anybody else that would like to testify on their behalf, happy to hear from them.
We work closely with them.
All right.
If that matters.
I'm anxious to hear about
Thank you.
them as well. Thank you. Appreciate you being here. Okay. Are there other partners that would like to come forward and speak? Thank you. Thank you. Is that it for partners? Look at my schedule. I think we have,
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
I know that we do have a couple of people from Startup Wyoming. I believe
that are online.
that are online.
Okay, let's get them on.
Lumley and Ms. Langley.
Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for the privilege to speak to you today. My name is Blossom Lumley. I am statewide director of Startup Wyoming, and I'm joined here today by my colleague, Christine Langley. Christine, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Christine Langley. I'm the Director of Founder Success for Startup Wyoming. Thanks for having us today.
So Startup Wyoming, our mission is to ensure that every high growth and innovative startup founder across the state has access to the resources, the mentorship, and the capital that they need in order to scale. We believe that founders can build companies with global reach, which will help strengthen our local economies, diversify our economy, and increase these innovative career pathways to build our workforce and retain our youth. Last year, we engaged with hundreds of stakeholders across all 23 counties to learn directly from them what it is that they want to see from an innovative startup community across our state. In the past few months, since we launched earlier this year with our programming, we have been able to connect with over 100 founders of these growth-oriented and innovation-driven enterprises. And we're in the process right now, and the referrals just keep on pouring in. We're in the process of mapping all of these startup founders by stage, by sector, and by region, so that we can continue to learn directly from them what it is that they need when they need it. So that's sort of where we currently are right now in terms of the programming that we've started to pilot and launch. We have educational programs in terms of this entrepreneurial mindset programming that we are starting. That's intended for our youth, for our small business, for anybody who is thinking about going down this entrepreneurial pathway, sort of, making the idea of entrepreneurship available and accessible to them to get them excited and engaged in going down this pathway. In addition to that, we're part of a statewide coalition of folks that are engaging in disciplined entrepreneurship training. It's been developed by MIT, and Mike Wandler and Marcio Barreto and UW, 60 people from across the state all got this training in October in order to look at in depth what the 24 steps that it takes to build out an innovation-driven enterprise from ideation all the way to scaling. In terms of mentorship, we have a couple of different partners that we engage with. Silicon Couloir in Jackson has the venture mentoring service that has been going on for a number of years. And they partner up closely with the venture mentoring service also at UW. In order to try to ensure that we're providing statewide support as those programs grow. In terms of access to capital, we were awarded a Growth Accelerator Fund competition prize by the SBA. And that has allowed us to start building out capital stack education so that we can sort of help educate people on the different kinds of capital that's appropriate for the different kinds of companies that exist in our state. In addition to that, we have a number of funding mechanisms. We've got YVC, we've got Kickstarter. One of the needs that has been identified is trying to build out potentially a statewide accredited angel investor network. And so we're looking at the mechanisms to try to create something like that based on a program in Durango that's been very successful in that rural community. So we're trying to learn from other rural innovation centers around the country to make sure that we're bringing the best ideas and the most applicable ideas to our state as this initiative grows. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what we're engaged in. And I'd like to, Christine, do you have anything to add to that I may have forgotten?
I think that was good, Blossom. We're happy to take questions.
Thank you.
All right. Any questions for the Startup Wyoming gals here? Ms. Columley, you had mentioned the funding that you had a SBA growth grant. Is that your normal funding? And this here document says that you get funding through the Wyoming Business Council. Can you just explain to the committee how that all works? And it sounds like this is fairly new. So is this going to be a long-term funding model through that grant, or is there other funding models that are going to be necessary?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Bear. So the Business Council issued an RFP and back in 2024, and that RFP was awarded to start Startup Wyoming. So that funding has continued to present day. In addition to that, we knew from the get-go that we'd have to be, pretty aggressive and active in trying to look at other sources of funding as well. The intention has always been that we want to grow this into a sustainable, and self-sustaining organization. And so we have gone, right now we are partnered up with Idaho National Labs on a $76 million Tech Hubs grant to build out the nuclear sector within the Idaho-Wyoming region. We have a small carve out of that to provide for a nuclear commercialization accelerator. That model, we're also shopping it around with other national labs, including Sandia and Los Alamos and the National Lab of the Rockies, to be able to build that kind of commercialization accelerator model for the energy sector within our region as a whole. So that's pretty exciting. That's one funding mechanism that we're going after, and having the statewide support to be able to provide the in-kind that will, allow us to go after those big swings for our state has been crucial. It's just been a game changer. There's also a number of EDA grants that we're going after so that we can look at building out the pipeline for entrepreneurial support all across the state. And this is something that we want to be inclusive of small business, of growth-oriented business, of innovation-driven enterprises, because the truth is that with our population, a small business owner can totally, a light bulb can go off in their head and they can say, hey, I can scale, beyond our community and, sell to the rest of the nation or sell globally. We have these resources like with, across the state that, can help people to do that. We want to provide the inspiration and the support to be able to do that. There's a number of different funding mechanisms that we are looking at the federal level. We're going to be looking at, foundation funding as well. But again, that support that the state itself provides in order for us to amplify that funding, because with 20%, or less of the statewide funding or other types of funding, we can go after these big multi-million-dollar swings, which we're not afraid to do.
Thank you, Ms. Columley. Can you tell me what is your annual budget now?
Right now, our annual budget sits at about $500,000. for operations and programming.
And how many offices do you have in the state of Wyoming?
Well, you're looking at us right now. We have 2 full-time people, and then we've got a half-time person that works with us on our operations. But basically, Ms. Langley she's at the heart of what we're doing as our Director of Founder Success. We operate on the assumption that we are here to serve our founders and the people of Wyoming in our communities. You know, we're here to accelerate their growth and help them achieve their dreams. What I do is I provide that wraparound support for those founders in terms of, you know, the resources and, you know, access to the different community partners and, you know, the funding mechanisms that we need in order to grow these efforts. So yes, our founders are at the center.
And are you familiar with the Wyoming Grants Office? It's a new part of the state government.
Absolutely, Drew Palmer, yes. And we actually LCCC has modeled the Wyoming Entrepreneurship Coalition that exists based on the grants office model, where they have every other week meetings that bring together a number of stakeholders to share information and updates with everybody anybody can jump on and learn about these different grants or different types of things that are going on, different conferences, all kinds of stuff to keep everybody informed.
Thank you.
Thank
Any
you
other
very
questions?
much.
We appreciate your being here. Thank you for
Thank you
sharing
so
with
much.
us. Eddie, you bet.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Vaughn, do we have anyone else? All right, I was going to grab my schedule. I think we're up to having the local governments, both the WCCA and WAM, come forward, and any of your constituents we'd love to have up here too. Might be here. Do you have any online? Any constituents online?
No, I'm aware of.
Where's my schedule? I want to make sure I'm just missing. Oh, here it is. I got it.
Karen, just sign on as a participant. Leave the slides.
Welcome to Joint Appropriations Committee.
Do you want me to sign on? Sorry, Chairman. Okay.
Whoever would like to start first. Drenzy.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm just trying to get our presentation here pulled up real quick.
I will be patient. I cannot speak for the rest of the committee.
I requested to share my screen.
I failed to notice that there's a break in here, and I don't like to do breaks very much, but if we could give you oh, you got it up now?
Yeah,
Are you ready
up
to
to you.
go? How long will your presentation be?
Not hurt to take a little break.
All right, let's go ahead and do that now. Let's take a 10-minute break. Okay.
I guess. Do this, okay.
Yeah. You're gonna head over there at 5:30.
As soon as we're done here. And if there's time, we'll try to make it to the WAM thing. Are you gonna go to the WAM thing?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Good.
Okay, welcome back. Hopefully we're all set to do your presentation now.
We are.
All right. Ms. Harpsworth, please
Sure.
proceed.
Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Ashley Harpstreet. I'm the Executive Director for Wyoming Association of Municipalities and also newly appointed Administrator for Wyoming Economic Development Association. Thank you for the opportunity to today as a joint presentation representing the Wyoming County Commissioners Association, the Wyoming Association of Municipalities, and Wyoming Economic Development Association. Just real quick, for those in the audience and those that aren't familiar with our three organizations, we want to explain who we are. WAM is a 501c4 private nonprofit association and has been the foundation of support for all Wyoming's 99 municipalities since our organization in 1928. We play a pivotal role in providing vital educational resources that enhance the capabilities of all local leaders. With a mission centered on advocating for the collective interests of cities and towns, we tirelessly promote policies that prioritize local decision-making and ensure the voices of 68% of the citizens who reside within these communities are heard and respected. Our goal is not to grow government, but to protect local autonomy, reduce taxpayer burden, and ensure policies reflect the realities on the ground. Whether it's infrastructure, emergency services, or land use, as partners in shaping Wyoming's future, we exist to ensure those communities have a voice. Do I get to say your part still?
Sure.
Yes. So we scripted this with him not being here, so it's fun to pretend I'm a county commissioner. The Wyoming County Commissioners Association was established in 1976 as the united voice of Wyoming's 23 counties. Created by Wyoming's county commissioners, the WCCA is owned and governed by its member counties. For nearly 5 decades, they have strengthened local government through collaboration, education, and advocacy. Their goal is to build resilient local leadership and ensure that the government closest to the people remains strong. Between WHAM and WCCA, we serve 100% of the citizens, businesses, and travelers that live, work, and play in our communities. With a joint venture with WHAM, WIDA was established in 1985 as a statewide nonprofit association representing nearly 50 economic development organizations and 200 strategic partners. It serves as a network connecting the professionals and organizations responsible for economic development across Wyoming. WIDA helps ensure the local economic development perspectives are shared, coordinated, and aligned with broader statewide economic priorities. Not a funding or regulatory body, we provide coordination, alignment, and practitioner and insight. WIDA strongly supports certified economic developers, and today, sadly, we're only about down to 3 that are in our state. This is a national certification that's recognized nationally, and we are working to get more certified economic developers in our state. As far as our local EDOs, Betsy Hale is the only last man standing right now. Between all 3 of these are what we feel are the users of the Wyoming Business Council system, locally connecting the dots and coordinating the efforts within their programs. We come before you with a shared message. Economic development in Wyoming must reflect Wyoming's realities. Ours is a state defined by vast geography, rural distances, aging and costly infrastructure needs, workforce constraints, and an economy deeply connected to foundational industries such as minerals, agricultural, and tourism. Because of those realities, practical and locally driven solutions matter most. Wyoming's tax structure is uniquely tied to mineral production. Unlike most states, we do not levy a personal or corporate income tax, which I know everybody celebrates in this room. Instead, our state and local governments rely heavily on mineral severance taxes and federal mineral royalties to fund essential services, infrastructure, and community needs. While this structure has served Wyoming well during periods of strong production, it also creates a fundamental vulnerability. When commodity markets shift, revenues decline, often sharply, and communities across the state feel the impact directly in their budgets, their services, and their ability to plan for the future. This reality makes economic diversification not just a policy, but an economic imperative. It was fun to see the report that was dug out of state archives and obviously what I think became the Business Council in 1997. So strengthening and broadening our tax base through strategic economic development is essential to ensuring that Wyoming communities can sustain themselves regardless of what happens in global energy markets. With that said, I want to be very clear. We must better protect those markets and vertically align our efforts with what we do best, leveraging Wyoming's core strengths to build a more resilient and self-sustaining economic foundation. We know we need diversification, but without a tax reform, it is critical that we continue to support our bread and butter. Economic development does not happen by accident. It is not simply economic activity occurring on its own. It is deliberate and strategic work of strengthening a community's prosperity, resilience, and tax base so it can support strengthening a community's prosperity, resilience, and tax base so we can support the services, infrastructure, and quality of life over the long term. We often speak about the building blocks of economic development, and the first layer is always leadership and vision. I thank you, Representative Pendergraft, for pointing that out. Without strong local leadership and a clear sense of direction, sustainable growth is difficult to achieve. Communities know their assets, understand their challenges, and are best positioned to identify opportunities that fit their region. That is why local leadership is essential, but local leadership alone is not enough. Success in Wyoming requires coordination between counties, municipalities, economic development professionals, industry professionals and partners, state leadership. When those partners are aligned, Wyoming is better positioned to attract investment, support existing businesses, expand opportunity, and compete for our future. Our goal today is to share a practical perspective from local level on how Wyoming can strengthen that partnership and modernize its economic development approach for the years ahead. Today, I'm joined with Brad Enzi, the CEO and president of Laramie Chamber Business Alliance, to joint present, and we have a wingman, Mr. Jeremiah Ryman from the County Commissioners Association.
Ms. Harpsworth, before we move on, I just have a quick question. Who certifies these economic development specialists?
Mr. Chairman, it's a group called International Economic Development Council, IEDC, and that is the national standard that when I was a practicing economic developer that was where we went and got all of our professional development. Now back under my leadership with WIDA, we are making sure everybody becomes a certified economic developer, including myself. I was almost through the program, and then I moved with my husband because I wanted to stay married with him and we moved out of Torrington. So I didn't finish the program, but I'm getting back on it, and I hope to be certified at the beginning of next year.
Can you say it one more time? The international.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, it's International Economic Development Council. I think I'll send you it's IEDC. I will send you the link.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Mr. Enzi, please proceed.
Mr. Chairman, Brad Enzi, the CEO of the Laramie Chamber Business Alliance. And I come before you today kind of as a representative more of WIDA. As the conversation progressed during legislature, it occurred to me that probably somebody involved in the talks from our side needed to get around to all the towns and counties and hear what they were hearing in a real practical, from a practical standpoint, in what was working and what wasn't working. So I asked Jeremiah and Ashley if I could tag along on meetings that they're doing, and we've gotten around, about 60% of the state now listening to what's going on at the ground level, both from the economic developers, but the challenges that towns and counties feel in this. To kind of frame it, and I'm going to run through this super quick because I think it's important just to kind of get a breadth and a scope of the different tools that are available and the different partners that we have in economic development from a practitioner's standpoint. This list will by no means be entirely inclusive, and stop me at any point if there's something that you're like, well, I don't know that acronym, or as I'm learning even today, there's a lot of acronyms that we have that they're not always the same acronym. That might be the 4 letters that we use for something else in another thing. But economic development thrives when the local implementers, regional connectors, state strategists, and private investors align tools, timelines, and trust. In short, it's a network system not done by any single actor. Success depends on the coordination of local implementers, regional connectors, state strategists, and importantly, in a free economy, private investors. Each contribute capital and capacity. In Wyoming, we have, just to start listing off a bunch that work in this space, the Department of Workforce Services, the Department of Environmental Quality, WYDOT, the Wyoming Water Development Office, the State Engineers Office, the State Lands and Investment Board, State Engineers Department, University of Wyoming Community Colleges, both in workforce and research, the Wyoming Energy Authority, the university, I already said the university, our federal partners in this space, the U.S. Economic Development Administration, the EDA, the U.S. Rural Development Offices, the Department of Energy, Department of Commerce, Small Business Administration, Department of Housing and Urban Development. The federal delegation is important at every step of this with Senators Barrasso, Lummis, and Congressman Hageman. In the private sector, we count on developers, whether that's in commercial development of buildings, in business development, industrial development, or in housing development. Industry anchors, energy, manufacturing, data centers, logistics, financial institutions, the banks, the CFDIs, private equity and bond underwriters, engineering, architecture and infrastructure firms, technology and innovation companies, the Chamber of Commerce and business alliances, local employers and entrepreneurs, real estate and site selectors. And then if you move to the nonprofit and community partners, you've got foundations and philanthropic organizations that contribute to projects around our state all the time. Workforce training nonprofits, housing and community development corporations, environmental and conservation groups, local leadership programs like Leadership Wyoming or Leadership Laramie, educational institutions and research centers. Then you've got the collaborative and convening entities like economic development associations, WIDA, NLC, ICMA, regional alliances and task force. Utilities and co-ops are a huge part of how economic development will grow in Wyoming, as well as other utility providers. Then you've got public-private partnerships that fit into it, that that create other, I'm apparently dyslexic myself right out of that page. Nice work. Whew. It's a lot of reading for a guy that doesn't like to read a lot. But collaboration, at the end of the day, collaboration is really the Wyoming model. And when we're working together, that's what makes it work together, is the collaboration. Because many Wyoming communities are smaller, success often depends on partnerships among the municipal government, their county, the Chamber of Commerce, the Economic Development Organization, the local utility, community college, or university, state agencies, and private employers. Economic development is most successful when it is locally led and locally envisioned. Cities and towns understand what their assets are, what their constraints are, where their workforce needs are, what their business climate is, and their infrastructure priorities. In the public sector, local governments, mayors and city councils, county commissioners, city, county planning managers and administrators, planning and zoning departments, public works and utilities owned by the city or the special district, economic development boards of authorities, local finance directors and treasurers are essential to making economic development decisions as a group. Regional economic development organizations, or the regional EDOs, are also important. In Southeast Wyoming, we work very well regionally already. There's not hardly a week that goes by that I don't talk to Betsy and Brian and the other economic developers that are closely aligned with what we're doing down there. The Council of State Governments, workforce development boards, regional planning commissions, and multi-county infrastructure transportation authorities play a big part of how we answer some of these needs in Wyoming, especially when you jump to a regional model. At the state government, you have the governor's office and economic development advisors, the business council, the members of the legislature, and then the local EDOs and chambers of commerces that really serve as that bridge between all levels of government and the business that's trying to do something in the state. With all that, we still need your broadband providers, those utilities, the needs that the business has that wants to grow or come to your town, transportation and logistics networks, water and wastewater authorities are becoming a bigger and bigger thing, and then the special districts that support all that growth. That's just kind of a really fast snapshot of all the different layers and how they go into one economic development decision. So it's not a simple, it's the business council or the local EDO or the other thing. For this system to work, it requires all those things to thread together pretty seamlessly and pretty quickly. Excellent. I think it's also important to note what economic development is and what it's not. Economic development is not simply incentives. That's a really easy way to look at. We went and bought that business to our state. We went and recruited. We went and helped grow. And that's really where you get to the what's a winner and what's a loser kind of economic development argument. It's not incentives. It's not recruitment trips. It's not ribbon cuttings. It's not government in that picking and losing. And it's not measured by whether one project lands in a community or not. Economic development is the deliberate work of creating the conditions that allow private investment, job growth, business expansion, and a stronger tax base to happen over time. Economic vitality begins with keeping and taking care of what we already have, strengthening the industries, businesses, and people that have always been Wyoming's backbone. And a sound economic development strategy ensures that we are doing that work intentionally rather than leaving the future to chance. For Wyoming communities, that means those infrastructure partners having sites that are ready with water, sewer, roads, broadband, power. That means predictable permitting, regulatory clarity, and a business process that we can understand. It means a workforce and housing capacity. That means local governments working together to provide a coordinated, business-friendly experience. What businesses consistently ask, as we've had this conversation around the state, is straightforward. They want clarity, speed, infrastructure, talent, clear costs, and a community that wants them there and wants them to succeed. That is why strategy matters the most. Economic development does not happen by accident. Communities that are successful typically have a plan, understand their assets, know their priorities, and are ready when the opportunity comes. And not every effort results in an immediate win. I've had some losses. Economic development's competitive, and even projects that don't land can strengthen our readiness, relationships, and reputation for the next opportunity. These strategies build upon each other time over time, which is why Wyoming's approach must be bipartisan, durable, and measured by achievable actions and goals, not tied to any one administration or movement. We have some major disconnects in the workforce space when it comes to address this part of the strategy discussion. One is the disconnect between the number of graduates that we generate in a year and versus the number of empty jobs that we have in the state. I thought Rocky said it best when he said, basically everybody who wants to be working is working. And that's why we have a giant gap. So you'll see all these data points that come out of the Department of Labor. And after the legislative session, I put one of my interns to work on how many graduates do we generate in a year in Wyoming? The answer in 2024 was somewhere north of 13,000, like 13,357 if we're picking numbers out of the sky. That comes just off of the State Superintendent of Public Instruction, the community college's website, the University of Wyoming, and then I called the Welding Institute in Gillette and Wyotech. And also called, because my daughter's in cosmetology school, I also called all the cosmetology schools in the state. It's 13,357. Same time period that we report, and it's the state data that comes from Wyoming Department of Workforce Services that was reported like May 9th of 25 for 24 was we generated 1,804 jobs. That's for every one kid that graduates from a program in Wyoming, they have a 1 in 7 shot of landing a new job. Somehow I always tell people my job is jobs. And I'll deal with things when it starts to affect jobs, but my job is jobs. We have to somehow get that job number closer to our graduate number and or push some of those graduates to those vacant jobs. It's really kind of the economic quandary that we push. And I think that that's one of the things that we're going to have to come to some idea of between the Business Council and the legislature is what is it that how are we solving and how are we counting the jobs quotient? Economic growth, later in this presentation, dyslexia, love it. We will share success stories from across the state, and in every case, you'll see the same thread. Leaders who are committed to a long-term strategy, knowing the results might extend well beyond their time in office or the job, but would ultimately benefit the community they serve. Economic growth, whether it's from a business growing from a startup or existing business in your town, or as a company looking to relocate, relies heavily on the following three things: consistency, clarity, and certainty. For Wyoming, any strategy must reflect the Wyoming realities: rural distances, high infrastructure costs, workforce constraints, and an economy rooted in minerals, agriculture, and tourism. In short, economic development is not the ribbon cutting. It's everything that happened before the scissors fell.
Mr. Enzi, could you go back? You said 13,357 graduates and how many job openings did DFS?
1,804.
Got it.
Okay, so we believe you get there through the building blocks of economic development. And if there's one takeaway from today, it is this: all these pieces have to be in place for a viable economic development system to work. You cannot have the top of this pyramid without the base, and the things in the middle that are a little squishy, workforce, infrastructure, and quality of life, do not always equate to an immediate return on investment. That is why aligning expectations within leadership around a shared vision is imperative from the start. Starting at the foundation, it starts local. Every community in Wyoming is different, and a win in Gillette does not look the same as a win in Lander or Thermopolis. That is why we are working right now through our regional meetings to understand what a win looks like in all 23 counties and 99 municipalities across the state, so we can align our strategy with the real expectations of the communities doing the work. The regulatory environment matters. The policies we put in place either create certainty or create confusion. Vision and expectations matter. Leadership has to understand what we are building towards and be willing to stay the course. Workforce is critical. We are making young people in Wyoming, we are just not keeping them. If we are not addressing why our youth are leaving and what it takes to bring them back to keep them here, we are undermining every other investment we make. In the middle layer, what communities need to compete, you cannot win at the top without serving your current businesses and encouraging entrepreneurships, and then finally recruiting new businesses, which I want to highlight is the last thing you do, not the first. If you do not have the middle layer and a place or at least a plan to get there, without there, you'll go nowhere. I was very encouraged to see the review of community facilities grant and the materials LSO presented today. That was something that made a huge difference when I was in Go Goshen doing economic development, because those are, again, kind of squishy quality of life things that helps build your ecosystem. And I think it was a very successful program that went away. This is the strategy, and the pieces do not always look traditional, but they are solving for readiness. Infrastructure ready sites like with water, sewer, roads, broadband, and power. Those are not direct correlations to jobs today, but for tomorrow. Predictable permitting and regulatory clarity, workforce and housing capacity, local government coordination, a true one-stop experience rolling out that red carpet, business-friendly processes and project management, consistent programming that the public and private sector can rely on to plan, timely across to resources and decision makers, or timely access. What communities need to compete and what businesses are asking for are the same thing: certainty in the regulatory and tax environment, speed in decision-making, infrastructure that's ready to go, talent to meet their needs and that wants to stay, clear costs and timelines, a community that wants them to succeed, and connectivity to the right people and resources. When those building blocks are in place, Wyoming wins. When they're not, we lose, not because the opportunity was not there, but because we just were not ready. And we have to be honest about where the system breaks down. Right now, we have a certainty problem. A business brings a project, goes through the hoops, locals say yes, the business council says yes, and then the slip says no. Often in a process that feels political. When government funding is involved, the terms are laid out when you respond to the grant. There are tons of public hearings at all levels of the process. Coming back and adding new barriers after the award undermines the entire system. To be effective, the objectives and rules have to be clear, and we cannot change them midstream. For example, Go Utah, model worth studying. Utah's Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity, known as Go Utah, offers a relevant example of how a Western conservative state structured its economic development system for effectiveness and accountability. Go Utah is housed directly with the Governor's Office, giving it executive level alignment, speed in decision-making, and clear authority. It serves as a single point of coordination between state legislative goals, local governments, and private businesses, so no one is navigating the system alone. 3 things make it particularly effective. First, Go Utah partners with the Economic Development Corporation of Utah, a private sector entity that manages the business recruitment and site selection. This keeps the state coordinated while leveraging private sector speed and expertise. Second, Utah is divided into 7 economic development regions, each with a dedicated regional director who lives and works in their community. Rural towns have the same access to state resources as Salt Lake City. The strategy is locally informed and state supported, and not the other way around. Third, all incentives are performance-based and transparent. Tax credits and grants are tied to measurable job creation, wage, and investment benchmarks. Taxpayer dollars follow results, not promises. The rules are clear and they do not change midstream. This is where there's a key distinction emerging between Utah and Wyoming's approach. Wyoming has traditionally front-loaded its economic development dollars, committing public resources up front with the hope that business success follows. Utah flips that model entirely. Through its business incentive and tax credit structure tied to its economic development tax increment financing framework, businesses must first meet clearly defined performance metrics before any incentive is realized. The state does not carry the risk, but the business does. Wyoming would be well served to examine this distinction closely as aligning our investment strategy to reward proven results rather than potential promises that could fundamentally strengthen how we grow and retain businesses across the state. Go Utah also maintains dedicated rural development programs, administers grants funding with transparent deployment, facilitates international trade, and targets high-growth industries, all coordinated through one streamlined system, which sounds really familiar to the report I read from 1997. We are not suggesting Wyoming becoming Utah. Our mineral-dependent tax structure, vast geography, and rural scale are uniquely our own. But the principles behind their success translate directly to the challenges our communities are telling us to be solved. Executive alignment, regional presence on the ground, consistent and transparent rules, performance-based accountability, and dedicated support for rural communities. These are not political ideas. They are structural ones and ones worth serious consideration. Any questions? Okay.
Any questions?
We're gonna, start our next slide with hopefully this will bring some, oh no, not Catholic Mass. Sorry, guys. With a video that shows the best success here. We're gonna see if I can YouTube. Got my mute.
When it comes to any economic, 40 years
Let's try.
ago, we were at ground zero when it comes to any economic.
Try mine.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, that's talking through Zoom, that messed me up. That's an example of that economic development is really a marathon. It's never a sprint. Cheyenne started with those partnerships with the Business Council almost 40 years ago for the first of what's now become kind of the hot spot of data centers in the United States. But private investment, it was a three-way partnership. There was private investment, there was city-county investment, and there was Business Council investment in that first business part. And that's really what it's evolved to and multiplied and multiplies again and again. And that's really what we have to look at as, what our aspirational model is as we set forth on kind of how do we endeavor to change every community that same way. To that point, as we've had these regional meetings, we ask people what's effective. And we've now done, like I said, about 60% of the state. And I ask two questions in every one of these meetings. And that's, what does a win look like in your community? Because I think that's an important question we have to ask. Not a win in Afton doesn't look the same as what a win is in Kimmer, and they're in the same county. And so we can get as granular or as broad scope as we want with regions, but we really have to ask the communities what's a win there. And then I ask them what's been effective in programs that you've worked with. Top of the list, out of the gate, every single time has been the Women's Business Center, the Small Business Development Center, and Manufacturing Works. And the reasoning behind those three in every call that we've had has been because they're in my community, they're available to me, and the businesses are met where the business is. And I think through the presentation that you heard from SBDC and from Manufacturing Works, you hear kind of how that system works, how they go in. The business might come in and say, I've got this great idea. I've been a welder for 30 years, but I have no idea how to run a business. Or the person comes into the Women's Business Center and says, I don't know how to write a business plan. And they take them through the steps to get to, a product and then bankability. But it meets them no matter where they're at in the deal. And we've heard from all of our communities those three have been very effective programs that they've been able to leverage into. Other partners that we hear as you kind of move up through and start adding in bigger and bigger communities, the Wyoming Smart Capital Network, which is leveraged. It started with the counties and towns, and some of the EDOs put in some money. It's multiplied, and it's another lending avenue that's available to partner through partnership with banks. The Small Business Association through Capital Access gets used a lot. Current state programming that we hear a lot, and first outside the Business Council framework, Wyoming Office of Tourism, almost every community that we talk to has some partnership that enhances the tourism and brings the bodies into town. The University of Wyoming, various programs, colleges and schools. The College of Business comes up very often, both from a workforce supply and the School of Energy Resources for solving some more complex problems comes up often. Community colleges, vital part of our economic infrastructure in Wyoming, whether that's how you're going to just have maybe a safety training that the community college partners with, all the way to economic, entrepreneurial development like the small business studio that LCCC is working on. And Blossom talked about a little bit in her presentation and how that flows back and forth. Another one that's super important that doesn't get talked about a lot, but has been in progress for how long is the innovation partnership?
Oh, since Gordon's campaign.
Yeah, so 4 or 5 years is the Wyoming Innovation Partnership as a conduit for funding. Really working on workforce development. The Worth Institute at UW became self-sustaining within 4 years, reaches all the Wyoming counties in 2025, goes through research, workforce development, and outreach. One of their great stories is Kyler Madsen of Star Valley accessed the educational element of the innovation partnership through the Western Wyoming Community College Powerline Technology Program, and got a really well-paying job, and that hit locally. And then the LCCC Business Hub comes up in the Innovation Partnership, which is a pilot program that now connects entrepreneurs statewide and uses that MIT framework for how to develop entrepreneurship in partnership with the College of Business. It's not just funding, but it's how you generate that workforce engine that creates the availability for businesses to either grow locally or a business to be attracted to your community. We've gotten a lot of feedback that programs accessed with great effectiveness in the current Business Council offerings include the Venture Fund, trade show dollars, entrepreneurial support, and we've had some great feedback through meeting facilitation that was assisted by the Business Council, largely through the regional director's staff, has been highly effective, but most effective when they're given, when the community leaves with a clear-cut idea of what the next step is. And here's the real kicker, and has the capacity in the community to actually take the step. I think that was the one that was, people were very clear that if you give us kind of the fishbone diagram, tell us what the next step is, and we have the ability to act on it, they're having a lot of success with that. In every system, it's also important to acknowledge other programs that are out there and that get access. Some of those include USDA grants, grants and programs, coal community grants, EDA programs and grants, the philanthropic grants, which we just used one through the L. Bilgin Foundation to launch a housing trust in Laramie, just as an example of how a local partnership flows through. Local EDO grants, where the local EDO makes grants to businesses or helps with kind of these workforce needs. The WEA and their matching energy funds are there. And then Go Goshen's an example where a local EDO created the 1/4 cent tax, and they then create grants out of that 1/4 cent tax. And I have to brag on Ashley because she's the EDO in the state that said, yeah, we're going to run a 1/4 cent initiative to specifically fund economic development, and that's continued to grow and gets reinvested in Goshen County into other programs and private grants. From a Laramie perspective, and this is just to put a little bit more local flavor on it, we've had a lot of success utilizing the Business Ready Communities program. We've recruited, we've attracted, we've built buildings, we've done business parks. We've taken those dollars as those properties sell and reinvested them. And we retain and grow companies in defense, firearms, farming, technology. We did one child care grant that was really early, like 2012, 2013 maybe, and mining. Additionally, we've invested and reinvested through both properties in internal finances to attract and grow companies in the food space, chemistry companies. Just most recently, we helped a stem cell company and technical education. When the tools and funds are available and consistently applied, communities have the ability to create local capacity that then gets reinvested. When the system changes, it's kind of like turning a battleship at full speed. So whatever we do here, realize that it's going to take a minute to go from one model, whether that's all grant or grant loan, or if we decide to go all the way to a loan program, it's going to take a minute for that to kind of sort out at the community level to where that capacity will start to build again locally. But as long as there's a consistent application of rules and there's certainty that once you get through the steps that the finish line gets met, it creates the environment for businesses to invest in your community. It's a long-term strategy that takes consistency over time and has to have all facets playing together to come to fruition. Changes that increase upfront requirements by communities is one thing that we have had a lot of feedback, particularly from the smaller communities in the state, that if that match goes up, they don't have the capacity to meet the match. And so we might want to look at how we maybe bifurcate by town size or something to that effect so that they still have the access to access the programs. If it requires a 30 or 50% match, it needs to be in alignment with what the community is going to be able to meet. has been some feedback, and it's just capacity. Like Laramie has bigger lending capacity than Matitsi. I would be remiss if I didn't bring up a few other points. Earlier this year, well, I guess it was last year, we went through a grant and loan process with Wyotech for their new facility. They're going to invest $35 million private, and it's a $10 million both grant and loan split evenly, and $5 and $5 million. To get that, as we went through the hearing on the grant and loan, the council then asked for an audit of all the dollars that Laramie's ever received in recapture funds through the BRC. I'm not here to complain about that. That was just a change that happened in the middle of the deal. What came across from that, though, is that as we went through the audit cooperatively with the county or the city, the county, I think Representative Sherwood's organization they looked at Main Street and other different, every entity, every dollar that's ever gone to Laramie. We found out that as a community, for every dollar that we've ever recaptured, we've reinvested $3 back into the community that created Made for You foods, that created other opportunities. When we've had a project go sideways, we put somebody else in the building and we grow business a different way. But there needs to be consistency with what the requirements are. So I hope that in the future, that will flow through, that everybody gets kind of that, how many dollars have you taken in? What were those dollars used for? How are we looking at those dollars? And that we take a good look at it. For us, it was greatly rewarding. It was 3 months of hard work and hell. But the outcome, I think, was super beneficial for both the council and the community to go, oh, we are doing a good job with that. That is a good flow through. 2 other points of feedback that I want to just hit on that have come up over the time, and as the kind of notion of the regional approach has gotten more and more, as it's been stated numerous times. I've talked to almost every EDO in the state for the communities that are big enough to have an economic development organization. There's apprehension about how that process is developing, that their local voice will be lost. I think Dr. Schaefer spoke to it a little bit. And I think that it's most effective when the idea comes from the community or the region that as it works. And I think this is where we're going to end up in some real tension as a state if it starts to feel top down or top heavy. And there's a lot of apprehension around that because it's going to impact what happens with workforce policy or even how things get referred. We do a really effective job in Southeast Wyoming between Brian at Go Goshen, Betsy at Leeds, and myself of taking companies and we say, well, that one doesn't really fit here, and we hand it off to the other one, and we try to make that be very effective. It needs to be locally driven. Second, and this likely plays in the ability to implement a strategy that Dr. Schaefer was talking about in this regionalization, and that's a fear that I've had several EDOs say, well, I can't testify. I'm worried about retribution. I'm worried that if I say something that will come back. And I think we just need to nip that in the bud right out of the gate so that we can get all the voices to the table. But local leadership can flourish, but it all comes back to those 3 points, that we have consistency, clarity, and certainty.
Okay, we're rounding the corner. So as we look at this regional model, we just want to talk about why strengthening Wyoming's economy starts again at that ground level. This is a map of the WAM's 6th region and how we've been looking at what's going on in each of our areas, just for a visual. Wyoming's long-term economic success depends on that strong coordination between the state leadership, local communities, and industry. We believe that policymakers play a central role in shaping the environment that allows communities to attract investment, support businesses, and build economic resilience. But that environment cannot be designed from the top down alone. It has to reflect the realities on the ground, and those realities are different in every corner of the state. This is not a one-size-fits-all challenge. What a win looks like in Kimmer is not the same as what we talked about earlier in Afton, even within the same county. Lincoln County is a perfect example. The southern part of the county is navigating the opportunities around nuclear energy development, sewer capacity concerns, while the northern communities are far more aligned economically and geographically with the northwest region of Alpine, Jackson, and Star Valley. A regional approach that recognizes these differences is not just preferred, but it's going to have to be necessary. We are doing the work regionally. All three of the partners up here today are. And we are jointly coordinating our efforts to build this alignment from the local level up. WIDA and WAM are in the midst of these listening sessions with our members. We hold regional meetings 4 times a year and are primed and ready to deeply connect with communities to ensure alignment between local priorities and state strategy. I hope my Region 6 is listening because yours is up tomorrow at noon. WCCA, with representation from each county and a network built to communicate quickly and effectively, will convene a session on May 15th with the Wyoming Business Council to facilitate a candid, solutions-oriented dialogue on state and local alignment. That discussion will focus on county experiences, infrastructure, and community vitality needs, including the role of the Business Ready Communities program and opportunities to better structure funding and support statewide. The outcomes of the engagement will be used to refine practical recommendations to inform the legislature during their upcoming interim review. Consensus block grant funding that you'll hear about tomorrow is one concept that we believe can help drive this regional ground-up approach, giving communities the flexibility to address their specific needs within a framework of accountability and shared goals. What we are hearing. Through our regional meetings, surveys, and constant one-on-one communication with communities across the state, several themes have emerged consistently. Housing and water are the #1 issues in nearly every community. These are foundational, and without them, there's no other economic development strategy that can succeed. Infrastructure funding has to get realistic. As one member put it, Wyoming might be able to get 100% new infrastructure in the ground, sewer, water, streets across the state, but that is only part of the equation. Maintenance and operation costs do not always pencil out through reasonable rates. Lander is a clear example. They have $47 million available against $109 million in high-priority infrastructure needs, projects that are already designed and ready to go in today's dollars, with only 7,500 people to pay for it within the municipal boundaries. The math does not work without a realistic partnership between the state and local communities. Smaller and unorganized communities feel underserved. We've had lots of conversations in the basin. Survey responses indicate that the value of state-level support has been minimal for these communities, and there is a real need for capacity building and technical assistance. Without organized local EDOs or well-funded, local efforts, chambers, public-private models, municipal or county staffed EDOs, many have noticed that the partner organizations like the Wyoming Women's Business Center, SBDC, and Manufacturing Works have provided a more direct on-the-ground support to entrepreneurs through advising, education, and technical assistance for only early stage and underserved business owners. That kinds of hands-on support is what works and what we need more of, not less. There is a disconnect in the current system. Communities are experiencing changing rules and consistent match requirements in a process that feels centralized rather than coordinated. What they're asking for is straightforward, less centralization and more coordination around existing partners rather than growing internal headcount. They want transparent capital deployment, accountability, and cross-agency alignment, which I think is really important, is knowing all the resources. Long-term commitment matters. Evanston has been working on the Roundhouse project for over 40 years. That kind of persistence should be met with a system that supports communities through the long arc of development, not one that resets priorities with every election cycle. The path forward. We are not here to point fingers. We are here because all three organizations believe that when state and local partners are aligned with clear expectations, transparent processes, and a shared commitment to Wyoming's communities, we can work through regulatory barriers like we did this last session and fast-track permitting for housing. We can build an economic development system that is durable, accountable, and effective for every corner of the state.
We appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this discussion on modernizing Wyoming's economic development infrastructure. This is an important moment for our state and how we evaluate what is working, where improvements are needed, and how we position Wyoming compete moving forward. Our perspectives come from communities across the state is straightforward. Wyoming needs an economic development system that is strategic, adequately funded, structurally efficient, and accountable for results. The four pillars, strategy, funding, structure, and accountability should guide this discussion. Structure. First, we must build from the ground up. Economic development should begin with a clear strategy rooted in local and regional realities. Wyoming is not one size fits all. What works in Sheridan may not work in Rock Springs. What Laramie needs is different from Torrington or Gillette. But this means we need a stronger framework for regionally and locally driven economic development strategies that identify existing industry strengths, workforce needs, infrastructure gaps, housing constraints, business expansion opportunities, target sectors for growth, and communities that know their needs the best. The state should support locally informed strategies, not impose top-down priorities. When strategy starts locally, investments become smarter, more competitive, and more sustainable. We believe that through the IEDC and that certification of economic development and creating CEDS, which are comprehensive economic development strategies for each community and each region, is essential. Funding. We need to invest in the foundations of growth. No strategy succeeds without capital tools that actually meet the needs today with dollars today that go to work today. As longer delays create higher costs, Wyoming communities consistently identify one issue above all others: infrastructure funding. Economic development requires water, sewer, roads, broadband, industrial sites, and housing readiness. Many communities are struggling just to maintain aging systems, let alone the expansion. We should evaluate reforms that include increased infrastructure investment statewide, funding for replacement as well as expansion, grants in addition to loans, more flexible matching requirements, site readiness funding, long-term sustainability planning, and we should also be strengthening tools like consensus block grants, which allow funds to move closer to local priorities and decision makers. If Wyoming wants growth, we have to allow that growth to happen. If we have a strategy built on the current system today, we can be set up for success in 5 to 10 years. Whereas the structure keeps changing, the timeline keeps changing. We need a structure that's leaner, faster, and more responsive. I don't say anything to say we don't need a statewide economic development entity. There's been no debate on that need. The function matters. It helps communities access resources, coordinate opportunities, deploy capital, and compete for projects, and to be our front door. But structure should serve the following outcomes. We should be asking, is the system responsive? Are decisions timely? Is the process predictable? Are communities supported effectively? And is the bureaucracy minimized? The goal should be a leaner structure with clearer roles.
The tax structure must remain central to any discussion of economic development strategy in Wyoming. Our economy is driven by 3 cornerstone industries: minerals, tourism, and agriculture. And any modernized framework should begin by asking how the state can better roll out the welcome mat and vertically align with local efforts already underway in those sectors. Minerals in particular remain foundational to how Wyoming funds government, services, and community investment. Even communities without direct mineral production benefit through severance tax distributions and the broader revenue system through industry support. For that reason, minerals must remain a top strategic priority. While diversification is both important and necessary, it should not come at the expense of industries that are currently sustaining Wyoming. Instead, we should focus on building from our strengths, supporting and modernizing our core sectors, while strategically expanding into complementary opportunities. Diversification and core industry support are not competing ideas. Wyoming can and should do both. Minerals must be part of that long-term strategy.
Finally, there must be accountability, clear expectations, and measurable results. We've heard through testimony and questions today how important it is that we know what tools are available, who qualifies, how the projects are evaluated, I think is a huge concern around the state, and what timelines applicants can expect before the project is decided upon, where the dollars get distributed, what outcomes are achieved, and how success is measured. What does that win look like? Think about the building blocks and how sometimes the ultimate win is not immediate. That means being honest that not every project will succeed. We have to normalize losses and that every loss can be a success for a community. It teaches us what not to do and how to do things better. That way, even a loss can still be a win. Economic development will always involve risk, but success should be measured through clear metrics, transparent processes, lessons learned, and continuous improvement. The transparent system that builds trust and attracts participation.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, we want to close with this: a call to reimagine Wyoming economic development system. It's time to reimagine what our economic development system looks like, who the customer is, how we invest in Wyoming, and what are we building towards. The current system needs to prioritize infrastructure first, create an environment where businesses want to be here, then incentivize on the back end, not the other way around. This is a living system. Local strategy feeds into the infrastructure funding. Infrastructure funding feeds into business readiness. Business readiness feeds into job creation, tax-based growth, and community resilience. Each piece funnels into the next. It requires long-term alignment, consistent expectations, and the discipline to measure progress with real tools and real metrics. It is a marathon, not a sprint, and sometimes there are hurdles, but you have to stay in the race. As Wyoming considers the future of economic development, we encourage reforms centered around these 4 principles: strategic planning rooted in local resilience, not studies commissioned from out-of-state consultants, not frameworks built in a vacuum. Listen to our locals. Our communities know their assets, their challenges, and what a win looks like in their region. Let's start there. Second, funding that supports infrastructure and competitiveness. Housing and water are the #1 issues in nearly every community we have heard from. We cannot get the basics in the ground and maintain them at a cost that pencils out. Nothing else matters. Consensus block grant funding that gives communities flexibility within an accountable framework is one tool worth serious consideration. Third, a lean and responsive structure built for speed and service. Wyoming does not need more internal headcount. It needs a system designed around the customer and the communities and businesses, which we believe are the communities and businesses we are trying to serve. That means a policy office with executive and legislative alignment coordinated with local efforts. It means grant management housed at the executive level for speed and consistency. It means a clear front door for business leads so opportunities do not fall through the cracks. It means connectivity to rural areas through regional presence and local capacity building. And it means leveraging public-private partnerships rather to try to do everything in-house. Models like Utah's Go Utah demonstrate that this structure works in a Western conservative state, and the principles translate directly to Wyoming. Finally, accountability through transparency and measurable outcomes. This will end this conversation. If we redefine what success looks like, not every investment has an immediate ribbon cutting, but every investment should be trackable, reportable, and tied to outcomes that communities and taxpayers can see and understand. Clear rules that do not change midstream, transparent capital deployment, cross-agency alignment. This is how you build a system that earns and keeps public trust. Wyoming communities are ready to grow. They're doing the work, showing up at regional meetings, responding to surveys, building local strategies, and asking for a partner at the state level that matches their ambition. All 3 of our organizations are jointly coordinated to make sure their local voices heard and constructively. We're asking for not more government, just a better structure, a modern, accountable system that starts at the ground level, reflects Wyoming's realities, and gives our communities the tools and consistency they need to compete for the long term. Thanks for hanging in there with us through this marathon of a presentation today. And we'll stand for questions.
Questions for WCCA, WAM, and WEDA? Well, you must have covered everything. I have some comments, maybe follow up with a question. I'll be brief because I'd really like to get public comment up here too. It looks like we've got some people that want to speak and some people that have shown up online. So we definitely want to get to those. Mr. Enzi, you aptly pointed out that starting, turning around, stopping creates uncertainty. We've had discussions, you and I, Ashley, about vision. You've given a couple examples, Go Utah and Cheyenne Leads. So if you could quantify what was the vision, who was the visionary there? How was it applied? Just what worked? What worked in Utah? What worked in Cheyenne? How did they keep it going year after year?
I'm going to jump in unless Betsy's online.
I can help a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I know the answer to it.
Mr. Chairman, so with Go Utah, it started in the governor's office. And I think we talked about that earlier in our building blocks is just leadership when we're aligning all those levels. And to me, that's the chief executive officer of the state. And so 2 governors ago, they penciled out this framework, and then Governor Cox's office has gone continue to go along with that. Our friends on the western part of the state know that Utah is a massive competitor. My friend Rocco at Evanston EDO is just always fighting the friendly environment Utah has. I mean, they're like #1 right now. They're just killing it. Yeah, just killing it. And so I think there's just a lot to glean and learn from them. I don't know if it's exactly the same, but I think it'd be worth calling them in and seeing if we can't connect with them. As far as Cheyenne Leads, they're super unique, but it's the textbook, like Jack said, the first director, they've had 3 directors in their 40-year history, which shows to the longevity and the buy-in of that organization. It's textbook economic development. They started with seed investment. They have a prosperity campaign. Am I saying that right? Progress and prosperity. And so is it the 3rd campaign that we're about to kick off, the 3rd campaign that's going to match all the PRCA funds. So we appreciate, and I'm saying this as them being one of my members and just following them for a long time, but they appreciate the state investment for the PRCA, but that's just one little piece of this $100 million project. They're gonna bring rest of that patchwork quilt of funding in. And so people that understand the visions of you got to have all these people at the table, that's where the success matters, but it starts with leadership and a plan. And I think that's and at a local level.
Do you believe that the consensus grants, satisfies your comments about the state needs to let local governments decide?
Mr. Chairman, absolutely. I think that it makes them work together. Jeremiah and I pretend like we're best friends, but sometimes we're not. And sometimes our members, fight behind closed doors, but it's great for them to have that injection and decide together what are we solving for and how does this all work together? I think it is also probably important to hear briefly from Jeremiah, as he was the policy director that worked in Endow and wrote that report. And we've heard a lot of reference points back to it. And nobody realizes this guy has like the key of knowing some of the stuff that we talked about a decade ago. So we kind of giggle. This is stuff that we've done 10 years ago. Here we are again. But he's probably the biggest champion of that consensus block grant model and why it works.
Mr. Newman, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I do think it's an incredible part of the equation here as we begin to move forward to give more of that voice at the local level and let them begin to make the investments. And I think about it in terms of family-ready communities. We have to start there. If we as individuals have access to the things that we need, the services, the utilities, we're going to want to remain there. Our children are going to want to remain there. We're going to want to build businesses. And that's really where you can invest in those existing businesses that are on Main Street, help them to grow and prosper, for our youth to become entrepreneurial and develop here. Because if you look at all of the data across the US and really across the world, if you start a business in a community, you're likely to stay there and continue to invest there. Sure, you may grow it to a place where you have to take it elsewhere, but you're likely to keep a component of that back home. So I think about it as family-ready communities first, and business or the countywide consensus program is a huge equation, part of that equation for me. Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to dig back in the recesses of my mind about Endow and the work that we did there. I might ask that be a future presentation and that I bring along some of my friends, because I have stepped away from that for a number of years and would love to refresh.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. Ms. Harpstreet, you multiple times mentioned housing as well as water. I think we can cover water with community consensus grants. So in a future discussion, I'd like you to hear your ideas about how the state should affect housing. I have my ideas, but it's going to be on a very limited government perspective, but I'd like to hear yours in the future.
Mr. Chairman, I can tell you, I'm urging my members to step away from like a landlord model and let's look more to infrastructure ready and developer ready and regulatory reduction ready. That it's turnkey, and that's what we're learning from the developers that are circling around our state. I don't want to bring up our favorite subject, which is exactions, but
Well, Milton Friedman would be proud.
I know, right? So, right, it's about getting that infrastructure and who's going to pay for it in our inverted tax structure. And so, and we are going to solve that this year, Mr. Chairman. Jeremiah and I are very committed to
Very
that
good.
conversation. But
Okay.
I think we're actually going to be more on the same page than you might realize.
Very good. I'll open it up to the committee one more time. Okay, looks like we're good. Oh, Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you guys for the presentation. It was long. And, but I think that really the beauty is, and I know we had this conversation this last year, Ashley and Jeremiah, having the conversation gets us into a position where we actually can start moving in a direction. Time is of the essence as we look at a lot of things that are just hard to get to shifting culture, all those things. As we move forward, and I heard your presentation, I saw what you guys were talking about, but if you could say, what's the number one thing that you're like, this has to change for municipalities and counties, more that infrastructure side to really see the bang for the buck. If there's one like silver bullet right out of the gate, and I know I'm asking for that kind of impossible, but like if you could bypass the process and just say, hey, this is our biggest bottleneck that we've seen, let's just hit that real quick.
Go ahead. Whoever'd like to go first.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Harrelson, what was your biggest fight when you started? A water tower. And what have I said over and over? And I mean, housing, we say it's a barrier to growth, but one of the issues that's creating a barrier is water. I mean, we have water issues from the Colorado impact, Colorado compact to right here in Rollins with wooden pipes that, I think the current administration is working really hard to problem solve for that, but that was years of like trying to, not keep up with the problem. And we just live in the high desert, so we've got water issues. And I think I told the Business Council board last fall when they're talking about some big hairy goals, I go, that's great, but I could use every single penny you've got. And Ryan Lance, one of their members asked, how much money do you need? And it's billions with a B in water development.
Director Richards, can you just confirm, we had a bill for a study on water usage for the state. And did that become law? Did we get that study passed?
Yes.
I think we did.
Mr. Chairman, we did.
So we've kind of laid the groundwork to figure it out, especially as we look at data centers. I think this all plays together. So,
Mr. Chairman, besides JAC being my favorite committee, my other favorite committee is Select Water, which is next Wednesday and Thursday, and we are talking about consumptive water use in data centers specifically. And just I'm becoming a master of studying that. I mean, all the data centers in Wyoming use half a pivot amount of water on an agriculture. So there's a lot of myth busting that needs to happen there. We're not just in economic development in general. And I can tell you from walking the walk for the last 20 years, we're not going to bring things in that don't fit our community. And if someone that lives in the water or in the county and that's watching our water table and giving my county commissioners a hard time all the time, why do we have new developments north of Cheyenne? Because I'm worried about my particular well. These aren't just decisions made on a whim. Or nobody's being bought. Like, it's about lifting the tax base and bringing people in that make sense in our economy and make sense with the services we can provide them in an affordable way. The other thing is we'll be talking about is my other favorite subject is stormwater, which is not fun to talk about because it's not one flush of consumption use, but something we have to mitigate when we have flooding. So there's just so many avenues we could go down in the world of water and serving our communities and in current situations and avoiding disaster and trying to be ready for the future.
thank you for that point on water usage on data centers. That's helpful. So, so we do have a study coming.
Yeah. Oh, Mr. Chairman, yes, that too.
Yeah.
There's like two or three.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it's bifurcated between OSLI and the Wyoming Water Development Commission. It is rather long. It's $8 million appropriation, and it's not scheduled to be fully complete until 4 years.
Okay. All right. We should have some good answers along the way, hopefully. All right. Thank you. All right. Let's go ahead and open this up for public comment. I know we have some online, but anybody in the room, please come forward. We'd like to hear from you. We have 3 chairs up here, so if there's more people who'd like to speak, come on up. And Ms. Vaughn, how many people online would like to speak?
Mr. Chairman, I have a number of people. I know of at least one, but if they would raise their hands, I'll know how many more we have.
So please raise your hands if you're interested in speaking on the subject of the Wyoming Business Council that we've been working on throughout the day. And in the meantime, we'll start with you, ma'am. You got up here first. Please introduce yourself to the committee and the public and tell us your thoughts on our discussion so far.
My name is Beth Blackwell. I'm the Grants and Loan Specialist for the City of Newcastle. I feel I have a unique perspective related to this conversation as I have been on both sides of the project funding scenario. Additionally, I've been able to pull from my training and 12 years of experience as a state bank examiner, which included the 2008 financial crisis. While I was a grant and loan manager for the Office of State Lands and Investments, I saw firsthand the wide range of needs across Wyoming communities, just how different these needs can be from place to place. Now working for a municipality, I'm truly in the weeds, learning firsthand how difficult it is to get critical projects funded and completed. When I began my work at OSLI in 2012, projects were frequently co-funded using mineral royalty grants, capital or countywide consensus, the SRF programs, the Joint Powers Act loans. They were regularly matched with Wyoming or Business Council funding. A lot of times you had cobbled 4 or 5 different funding sources together to make sure you had a fully funded project and you could get the whole project done rather than just a phase of it. Given as the emphasis switched from providing infrastructure to communities and proving a return on investment, these co-funded projects became increasingly rare, even though they were often the only way for rural communities to move forward. I was lucky to be part of the Business Council trip to Utah in 2004. It was an eye-opening trip for me in the sense that Wyoming can be doing so much more for our communities. First, I think most importantly, they have planners that work within each region to assist communities in planning and finding funding. The community leaders we met stated they didn't compete against each other for the same dollar. They worked together as a region. This may be a difficult push in Wyoming as most communities aren't willing to regionalize their water and wastewater systems because we always joke, played football against each other on Friday. But regionalization is not a popular thing in Wyoming, and it should be. One major problem in Wyoming is Wyoming lacks the population to ever gain economics of scale that other states have. We have a population equal to Albuquerque. Our footprint is much larger than Albuquerque. We have population of Memphis. Once again, our footprint is much larger. So one water system has 500,000 people to pay for their infrastructure. Where in Wyoming, we have maybe 7 water systems that are over 10,000 people, and the average number of users on a water system is approximately 220. You cannot fund operations plus save for improvements, let alone upgrades to a system with that lack of population. It's difficult, and if small systems were, the fees that they would have to charge their communities would be unaffordable. So it's a chicken and an egg kind of thing of how do we take care of that? Because the thing that is great about Wyoming is the small nature. We're rural. We used to joke when I was at OSLI that we're kind of a third world country when it comes to water. Some of our systems are really struggling. And it's not a thing to laugh at, but what's in place nationally doesn't work for Wyoming. The SRF program is great. It works great for our bigger systems. Our small systems that have 75 users, it's not reasonable to expect them to go to an SRF loan. The requirements with an SRF loan increase the cost by 25% approximately. You have Davis-Bacon, you have American Iron and Steel. You have a lot of these requirements that these small communities are dependent on consulting engineers to help with. They don't have anyone to help them figure it out. And unfortunately, we have great engineers in this, or fortunately, we have great engineers in this state. However, not all of them are looking out for the best interests of our communities for the long term. A lot of people don't want to work with the SRF program because of the requirements. It's difficult. However, that may be what's best for that community. And so one of the things that I learned on my trip to Utah was their planners that they had on staff, having someone be able to go and sit in a community across the table, and maybe they sit there for weeks and they help them plan. And it's not just planning. When you plan for growth, you don't just look at your water and sewer. Is your grocery store, do they get groceries delivered frequently enough? Do you need another grocery store? Is your school big enough? These are things that people forget to look at when they're looking at growth. And so having planners on the state dime would be great. The other thing is, while the grant management office has been around, it would be beneficial to consolidate their efforts with the Wyoming Business Council. Having those people that we are paying to help find funding, have them at the table, have them helping figure this out, because really, we have a lot of tools in the state. Maybe we're just not using them to the best of our ability. And maybe we need to amend a few, change a few so that they work better for us now. The needs of the state have drastically changed since the Business Council was initially created. One thing remains the same, is that we need them and they have made a difference. In 1997, Amazon, online shopping, smartphones weren't available, and AI was only a consideration within the movies. Today it is real. It is all real, and it is impacting future workforce. And what about COVID? That changed how the world did business, and we are still trying to figure it all out. It is important to always evaluate how we can improve processes and programs, and sometimes that means starting from scratch, because what you thought was going to happen didn't, or conditions have changed, so you must take lessons learned from past successes and failures to make a better process or program. Even pulling from other programs that work well. One such thing that could be included in the Business Council is similar language to what is included in the Mineral Royalty Grant Program, which allows for that office to consult with other state agencies who have the technical expertise on the different types of projects that are being considered and funded. This allows that everyone is on the same page. It allows so that those projects that you're considering funding that have to go through DEQ for permitting and those types of things, maybe problems are going to be identified early on when you're having those consultations with those agencies. We have great state employees who have wonderful knowledge and they have great training. We might as well use them. We pay for them. Let's use them in all realms that we can, and not just think because this is our silo, we know it all. I think it's important that we benefit from all the knowledge across the state, because there is a lot. I know when I worked for OSLI, those consultations with those other agencies were invaluable. There are things that they know that you don't know. They know the ins and outs, and like the DEQ district engineers, they're going to have more knowledge related to water specifically than anyone else. They're in those areas. They understand what's needed, and they understand the type of projects that are going to be beneficial, the size of the project that it needs to be, those types of things. A lot of focus has been put on the Business Ready Community Program, and rightfully so. To me, a truly business ready community has all the essential infrastructure, available housing, and financial tools necessary to support growth. Any project that improves these fundamental elements should be considered economic development and a success. Housing is a big problem. Until that is addressed, how does the state actually reach its full potential? It's as if we are in a chicken and an egg situation when it comes to housing and jobs. Whether it's affordable, attainable workforce housing, it is all needed. My question is the committee considering the lack of workforce housing as it directly impacts the business council's ability to attract new businesses? If it's not, I please ask you to. Housing in Wyoming is different than anywhere else in the state or in the country. The state has historically lacked the necessary supply of homes to meet the demand, let alone have a surplus of housing, which has kept the housing prices high. In 2008, when the rest of the country saw drastic decreases in housing prices, Wyoming did not. The housing supply had not been built up in Wyoming like other areas, so the level of foreclosure in Wyoming was relatively low. And the only Wyoming bank to fail was one that invested largely outside of Wyoming. They invested in Florida, Colorado, California, and other areas that saw drastic decreases. When you ask questions like, why didn't such and such place receive funding for X, Y, and Z, like the place down the road? A lot of times that has to do with capacity. Either they didn't have the capacity to apply, or they didn't have the capacity to plan to apply. Because you can apply for a grant, but if you haven't planned before you apply, you're not going to be successful. It's kind of planning. Failure to plan is planning to fail kind of thing. One thing that will make a big difference when it is completed is the water infrastructure study funded this past session. This study will allow all systems to be able to look at their systems, see where they're at, look at all the important elements. It's going to do a capital improvement plan for those systems. So it's really going to look at the elements of within that system, the state they are in, how close to the end of their useful life are they? How essential are they to operating that system? So if that element goes out, is your water system dead in the water? And how quickly can you go back and fix that? So really the purpose of that study is to try to help all the water systems figure out where we stand, what's in the ground. So many communities have designs that are on the shelf that are stamped, built as designed. Put it on the shelf. They go and pull that out and they go try to dig up that line, especially now while they're doing their inventory for lead and copper lines. They're not finding what they expect to find where they expect to find it. That is a problem across the state. So this study is going to be tremendous in the sense that I would have given anything to have had that study when I was awarding ARPA funds. You then know that grant funds are going to needed projects versus wanted projects. A lot of times people complain, well, I want the line in front of my house done because I keep having problems. Well, sometimes that problem is caused 5 miles up the stream. So your system may be taking care of the problem. It's just not where the individual thinks the problem is. I've heard questions from the committee related to lack of public engagement. Generally, there's an opportunity for the public to engage. There's public meetings, there's notices put in papers. People do not take that opportunity. I've attended 2 public meetings with the city of Newcastle. The lack of attendance is pretty sad. However, they have started to hold shareholder meetings, which they send letters or knock on the doors of the individuals that are directly around the project, and they hold a meeting specifically for them to come and ask questions. Sometimes they're attended well, other times they are not. Most people wait to complain until the project is a nuisance to them, and then they start complaining. The grant versus loan question. Many communities, as I said, just can't afford a loan because of their population. There is not enough people to generate the revenue to pay back a loan. Our systems have a hard time just paying their operations, let alone saving. And that's not just water and sewer systems. I think that's for everything with the loss of property taxes. I know the city of Newcastle lost their whole street budget. There was no money to do chip sealing to keep the life of our roads going. So those are the things that are happening. One thing I would like to explain is after COVID, the cost of infrastructure projects are exorbitant. In 2020, the cost of a foot of a water line was $200. When I was speaking during legislature, it was for Newcastle, it was approximately $500 at that time. Our last project, the cost per foot of water main is $650 per foot. That's ridiculous. And how does a small community afford that? They can't. And so with new regulations coming on board, they're also going to impact our communities. I asked the members of this committee, how do we determine an ROI on providing clean drinking water, ensuring wastewater is being treated appropriately, and providing the necessary infrastructure? Furthermore, how does the ROI calculation being used to determine the success of the business council? Does it include the benefit of all these projects to tourism? That is something that is an indirect benefit from these projects. I do find it disheartening that the focus is on what the business council hasn't done or done well instead of what they have done and done well. I must ask if any studies have been completed related to where the state would be if the $1.5 million hadn't been invested in Wyoming through the business council. And if we had done nothing, where would we be today?
Thank you. Are there any questions? Ms. Blackwell? Ms. Blackwell, I have one from the beginning of your statement having to do with regionalization. You discussed the real difficulty of having an average of 220 users on a system, and you said that we should embrace regionalization. How is it possible for regionalization to work in Wyoming? I mean, can you explain it?
I think it comes down to the local communities wanting to work together and seeing the benefit of the regionalization. For instance, around Thermopolis, you have South Thermopolis, I think you have Owl Creek, you have several different water districts around there. All of them get their water from the same place. Why aren't they just one water district? Then you would have multiple operators. You'd have economies of scale so that each district, when they're doing their project, you're just not solely dependent on those individuals in that district. You would have the whole region and everyone would benefit from it. The difficulty is some regions, it's just not doable due to the distance between areas. However, Green River and Rock Springs, they could very well regionalize everything. So it's really a matter of getting the communities to understand the benefit and really helping them, because it's going to be expensive to regionalize. But at the end of the day, it's expensive to replace our infrastructure anyways.
Do you believe that's there are more and more examples across the state than just a couple like that? You think it's pervasive that we can take advantage of that?
I do think there's pockets where you can benefit from that. I've spoken with Representative Larson about potentially, the Lander Riverton area. That's a big, big area, but there is a triangle that can be made in that area. How do we visualize that and how do we make it happen? It's one of those questions that you need the right people and all the money in the world.
Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your comments. You brought up something that I don't think anybody in this room can fix, but I really like the county consensus idea because it forces these communities to work together. And I think it was about 25 years ago, the airport in Thermopolis was having issues. The airport in Worland was having issues. And somebody said, why don't we just put one in Winchester? Oh, we couldn't do that. Oh, no. If we force them to work together and they realize the limitations that we have, we're much more likely to see what you're talking about happen. And, you look all over the map and there are all these little pair cities in Sheridan County. We got Dayton and Ranchester, and they each want to maintain their own integrity and their own color. And I get that. But if you want to have all the amenities and there's only so much money, we're going to have to work together. Wouldn't you agree?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Pendergraft, I would absolutely agree. I would say I'm really excited with the city of Newcastle. We are working together with the town of Upton. We received funding for a joint application for housing where we're going to take dilapidated properties in both communities, rehabilitate them, sell them, then reinvest the sales funds back into the communities. I think this is an opportunity to show other communities that it can be done, where two communities can work together and both come out better. The thing with grant funding is there's just not enough funding to go around to fund two communities that are in close proximity together. So what we are trying to do in Weston County is really try to leverage what we have. Some of the other things that we're trying to do is Newcastle's going to hire a building inspector. We're going to loan that building inspector to the town of Upton to help with their building inspections, because neither community needs a full-time building inspector, but together we need a full-time, and you're going to get a better candidate if you have a full-time job with benefits. We're doing this, we've been approached by the Weston County to share our city engineer. So I think there's opportunities where governments have to find that path to each other of where we can work together and find that common ground.
Senator Larson.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have a question. I just have a comment. I just want to make sure that everybody realizes Wyoming Water Development has been working on regionalization of water systems and drinking water specific for many, many years. She's shown municipal pipeline. I don't know how many years been in, 30 years? At least 30. And it goes from Cody all the way to Lovell. Southern Bighorn County, big project there. So it's always a topic that comes up at the commission. And is there a way to get, towns to work together? So I just wanted to make sure that that is being covered.
Good to hear that, Senator. Appreciate that comment. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate your being here. Welcome, Mr. Victorin. Appreciate you being here.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Members of the Joint Appropriations Committee, my name is Shane Victorin. I traveled 3 hours today from Torrington to be with you, testify in person. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having this committee meeting. My comments today are as a private citizen, a regular Wyomingite. And I want to give my comments regarding the Business Council and specifically the Business Ready Communities program. My comments will focus on whether this program as currently structured is operating within the limits intended by the legislature, or whether it has effectively become something else. The reality is this: the Business Ready Communities program is no longer an infrastructure program that reasonable people would come to understand it to be. Rather, it has evolved into a mechanism that can be, and in practice, or at least has attempted to be, used to direct substantial public funds into projects that are closely tied to specific private interests, with limited statutory constraints and limited legislative oversight. That's not a minor policy concern, that's a structural issue created within the authorizing statute itself. Wyoming Statute 912-601, paragraph A, describes a program that's intended to support economic development through infrastructure. Most legislators and most taxpayers reading that language would reasonably assume this means core infrastructure, water, sewer, roads, telecom, things that benefit entire communities and the public writ large. But that's not where the statute stops. Wyoming Statute 912-601, paragraph B, authorizes funding not just for infrastructure, but for land, buildings, and critically, quote, other infrastructure determined by the council to be consistent with the purposes of that article. That clause essentially hands authority to define the program's scope to the council. And at that point, the legislature is no longer setting the boundaries. It has effectively delegated that responsibility away. When a statute allows an agency of the state to define its own limits, those limits tend to expand. That is exactly what has happened here. With the inclusion of the word buildings without any statutory definition, it has allowed the program to move beyond public infrastructure and into areas that look, function, and are perceived by the general public as subsidized development tied to individual private businesses. Whether that was the original intent or not, it is where the statute leads, and it is where staff of the Business Council take their perceived authority from. At the same time, Statute 912-602 provides that funds are, quote, continuously appropriated. That means once the money is placed into the program, it's effectively removed from the normal appropriations process, and this committee should be concerned about that. It is effectively the legislature does not have to revisit that appropriation. They don't have to re-justify it. And so for a program capable of directing millions of dollars per project, to me, that is an extraordinary level of insulation from legislative oversight. When you put these two elements together, the open-ended statutory authority, along with the continuous appropriation, what you have is a program that can expand in scope, commit significant public dollars, and operate with limited direct legislative control. That is a structural reality built into the law. This brings me to the constitutional issue, and I won't belabor this issue very much, but the anti-donations clause of our state constitution, Article 16, Section 6, prohibits the state from making donations or extending aid to private individuals or corporations. When the primary effect of public spending is to benefit a specific private entity, the justification for this program becomes much harder to sustain. And that leads me to a fundamental question for this committee. Who is setting policy here? Is it the legislature through clearly defined statutory limits, or is it the administrating agency through broad discretionary authority granted by phrases like other infrastructure determined by the council? If the legislature is comfortable with that sort of level of delegation, then the current statute reflects that choice. But it should be acknowledged clearly. This is not a tightly defined infrastructure program. It is a broadly discretionary funding mechanism. I do not believe that was the intent, and therefore would urge the legislature to tighten the statutory language. For these reasons, I would suggest a few targeted refinements. First, the legislature should clearly define buildings within the statute. To mean, rather, that publicly owned facilities used for government or public infrastructure purposes, and explicitly exclude commercial or speculative buildings intended for private use. Second, the other infrastructure clause should be narrowed so that the legislature and not the agency sets the boundaries of the program. And third, the continuous appropriation should be replaced with a requirement for legislative appropriation so that funding decisions are revisited regularly. This would restore the rightful oversight to the state's first branch of government. At its core, this is not a complicated issue. The question is whether the legislature wants the program to remain a true public infrastructure program, or whether it is comfortable with the program continuing to drift into open-ended project funding with limited statutory guardrails. Right now, the statute allows that drift. Earlier this morning, a member of the Business Council Board of Directors talked about his uneasiness with SLIB's final authority. And I want to sort of push back respectfully on that, in that that is the proper checks and balances here at the end of the program's intended purpose. This is how the people are represented by the state's top 5 elected officials. So it is important that the SLIB board has that final say. The Business Ready Communities program, like any program of the state involving public monies, needs desperate periodic review. And these proposed changes are intended to clarify the scope of the program, restore oversight, and ensure that it continues to operate as a true public infrastructure program, consistent with Wyoming's constitutional principles and fiscal responsibility. Thank you for the time today, for allowing me to testify. I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. I'll start by letting the committee ask it, but in the meantime, I'd just like to prepare Director Richards to address the comment about continuous appropriation. I don't think we're really in that situation with the BRC grants. If you look at this graph on page 7 of our memo, we've had increases, decreases, and it's usually legislatively approved during the budget. And there was a request of $0 on the current budget, which this body went with the governor's recommendation on that. So I don't think that's quite the right term. I just want to confirm that with Director Richards.
Mr. Chairman, I do believe that the statute uses the term continuously appropriated, but it is used differently from, for example, the bill draft that Tamara discussed earlier today. In this case, it allows the Wyoming Business Council to carry over unspent appropriations from prior biennia and use those continuously.
Right. So any funds that we've already appropriated, they can continue to use them, but it's not quite the same as what I did. I just want to make sure the committee was on the right page. And
Yes,
use
and that was my intent.
Okay,
Mr.
very
Chairman.
good, very good. Okay, comments, questions, committee? I thank you for this clear description of the concerns, and I think this committee, in the last interim, brought a complete elimination of the agency based on similar concerns. That was not the desire of the body to do that, and so now we're looking at reform. I think you've zeroed in on the BRC grants, and I think we're looking at going a different way with a different solution. So maybe that could be resolved with these consensus grants. There's been a lot of testimony requesting that we keep the BRC program and have both simultaneously, but I think your comments are on point and need to be taken very seriously by this committee, so we appreciate them.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And I think we have someone online, maybe two people online there. So, oh, no, one of them is that
Mr.
guy in a southern country that still has the exact same Senate chamber that we do. Ms. Vaughn, who do we have online?
We have several, and I've kind of teed them up.
Okay.
We'll go ahead and hear from Mayor Highsmith, and then Mr. Brubaker, and then I have Mr. Bass and Mr. Rodkey.
I'll have you restate their names as you have turn on their mics for them.
Absolutely. The first will be Mayor Highsmith.
Mayor Highsmith, welcome to Joint Appropriations Committee. We see your hat really well. If you could turn there you go. Thank you.
There again, Mayor Joel Highsmith.
Still not hearing you yet. There you go. I think we got you now.
Are we okay now?
Yes. we hear you.
Okay.
Welcome.
Well, good afternoon. Yeah, Mayor Joel Highsmith, town of Shoshone, Wyoming, a mid-sized municipality in the state of Wyoming. Currently, at the last census 471 ranks as the 55th largest municipality in the state. In any event, we're just want to bring up the most of Wyoming is what people call small. The top third are 1651 and up. The middle third is from 356 to 1644. So I'm speaking for the town of Shoshone and many of the small communities, but the BRC, I know we're working with the Business Council, been working with one in particular. That would be a $6 million loan grant if we work out the rest of the financing. Of that, there would be $3 million would be a 2% loan, and $3 million is what they refer to as a grant, but it would be paid at 0% interest. Of that, about up to $2.25 million would come back to the town of Shoshone on the recapture part of it. I don't know if many people understand how that works, but and then we would get that over the next 20 years on payments that we'd receive from Wyoming Cardiopulmonary is looking at establishing a regional center in Shoshone, Wyoming that would serve the Fremont County and the Bighorn Basin, approximately 15% of the state's population, over 27% of the landmass. But without a BRC loan available, this project would not happen. And it would bring, much needed health care, which is, it doesn't create the amount of jobs as some would, but it would create some pretty good jobs, 9 high-paying jobs, not excluding doctors start off with, but the living quality of life would be so much better in this region with cardiologists available. But that would work real well, that BRC in that instance, especially for the town, and especially that recapture part of the loan that goes back to the municipality. that'd be a huge game changer for us in this town. But we have some experience without past BRCs. We currently have a Curry Rail System in Shoshone in a facility that started with a BRC loan in 2005. But they have 30 employees right now. They are looking to expand, and I believe through ID Inc. They're also going to want to work with the Wyoming Business Council. They anticipate with expansion, they could double their workforce after that is done 2-3 years down the road. Very, very important. But without the initial investment, we would not have that here in Shoshone. 30 jobs is a big thing. We have a housing issue, as everybody else do. Many of the people live in Thermopolis or Riverton that work here. We also had a BRC grant, primarily 95.5 grant, to put in a sewer system for Wyoming mushrooms. But through valued engineering, we saved approximately $400,000 coming under budget, over 3, less than 4. And the business councils allowed us, we have a subdivision, 40 acres with approximately 70 lots, to run with that. The money that we had left over, they allowed us to put in our sewer systems in our subdivision. And that was, that really helped us out big, and was able to get that infrastructure completed that we needed to do. It just the consensus is the countywide consensus program. It could be a good thing also, but I believe, as Senator Nethercott said Monday down in Minerals, that she'd like to look at a way to do both, whether it's under the business council or if there's somebody else running it. I don't know, but I believe both have their places. And I really would hate to see, because I believe this BRC allows a community like Shoshone, that we're a mid-size, allows us to do something like that, to really do this project, Wyoming Cardiopulmonary, to help us move forward on that, benefit our region, our town, our region, our state. We would not be able to do that without their help. I just strongly support to try to keep both alive. And like I said, I'm just a country boy from Shoshone, Wyoming, so I don't got a polished speech, but there it is. And I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mayor. Any questions for the mayor? All right, seeing none, we sure appreciate your being here.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Ms. Vaughn?
I have Mr. Brubaker up next, and on deck is Tyler Bass.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Devin
Welcome to
Brubaker.
the Appropriations Committee. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Devin Brubaker. I serve as the airport director for the Southwest Wyoming Regional Airport in Rock Springs. Also the president of the Wyoming Airports Coalition, and as a local member of our EDO board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today as you evaluate the Wyoming Business Council and all the programs that they offer. From where we sit as airports, continued coordinated economic development efforts across Wyoming are essential. In a state like ours, where distance and workforce challenges and market access all play a role, having an organization that brings expertise, structure, and statewide perspective to economic development is critically important. The Wyoming Business Council has provided that value. They don't just fund projects. While those investments are critical to local capacity building, the assistance they provide to communities to think strategically, align stakeholders, and build a path forward is the real success. In Sweetwater County, that kind of guidance has been foundational in turning ideas into actionable progress. That level of coordination helps ensure communities are building towards shared goals rather than working through challenges in isolation. As you consider the subset of work around local capacity building through infrastructure investment, we would suggest that these efforts are most effective when they are part of a broader economic development framework. From an airport perspective, that connection is very clear. Airports rely on strong local economies to sustain air service in our operations, and in turn, airports support over $3.5 billion in annual economic impact across the state through business growth, tourism, access to markets, and so much more. Because of that, airports are a natural and important piece of the infrastructure conversation when we talk about building long-term community capacity, either through the next generation of the Business Council or other local infrastructure funding mechanisms like consensus funding or YDOT. We've seen that when economic development strategy, local planning, and infrastructure investment are aligned, supported by the knowledge and experience of a statewide economic development entity, it creates better outcomes for communities across the state. We appreciate the committee's thoughtful review, the whole legislator's thoughtful review of this, and we look forward to working with you as Wyoming's airports, and happy to stand for any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Questions for Mr. Brubaker? Mr. Brubaker, are you familiar with a project downtown Rock Springs with an old bank building?
Yes, sir.
So it's my understanding about $5 million has been invested by the state into that particular entity. It was tried to save the building, and now it's up for sale. A developer, I think, has picked it up for about $500,000, and they're going to have to invest a lot to make that building useful. Would that $5 million have really helped the airports around the state if we'd invested it there instead of in a building that's sitting vacant?
Mr. Chairman, appreciate the question. And while I am familiar with the project, I have not been involved with that project. That is a City of Rock Springs project. And in a moment of self-preservation as a director of a joint powers board that's partially funded by the City of Rock Springs, I will leave that one alone. But I do have full faith in our Mayor Max Mickelson and our City Council that they are operating in the best interest of the city in the environment that exists today. So I appreciate the question, but I just for a moment of self-preservation, I will maybe avoid the answer there.
Thank you. Thank you for that. All right. Is there any other questions for Mr. Brubaker? All right. We appreciate your being here.
Thank you.
Ms. Vaughn?
Next up is Tyler Bass with Chris Rodkey to follow.
Mr. Bass?
It says I'm unable to start my video. Oh, there we go.
Very good.
Well, thank you for, can you guys hear me now?
We can. Welcome to
Nice.
the Joint Appropriations Committee.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, I have not prepared as well as these other folks, so thank you for listening to me. But I just want to bring a little bit of the entrepreneurial perspective to this from someone who started a company here in Wyoming about a year and a half ago, particularly focused on the market expansion grant and kind of what that has allowed us to do. Our company sells software to lawyers across the country. We were based in Wyoming. We actually ran a law firm here in the state, and decided to build a software tool. As you guys are well aware, Wyoming is not like selling a software tool out of California necessarily. A lot of people are kind of doubtful that we're building something here, all that kind of stuff, which I think is a misconception. But through the market expansion grant and what we've been able to accomplish with that, we've really been able to establish our brand on a national level. So that's been, incredibly powerful and beneficial to us. And I just want to give a quick testimonial to say the cost of entrepreneurship here in Wyoming, while it seems daunting, the resources that the state provides to people, in my shoes who are starting companies and trying to grow things to import economic value back into the state or provide jobs here in the state as well, is truly something that, has meant a lot to us throughout this process and has made it where starting a company was a little bit easier. So that's the quick testimonial. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Bass. How is the business going now?
It's going well. We're getting ready to scale to a nationwide audience. We're still in our startup phase right now, but yeah, looking to kind of continue forward and raise capital and see where we can go.
Can you prognosticate on whether or not AI will replace attorneys?
Well, we sell AI to attorneys, so hopefully the plan is that we're empowering them.
Can't wait to see the outcome.
Yeah,
Thank you very much for being
it's
here.
interesting.
Any
Thank you.
questions for Mr. Bass? All right, thank you very much for being here. And is it Rodkey, Mr.
Yes,
Rodkey?
Mr. Rodkey, and then Mr. Wall.
Yeah, I think you can hear me, but I'm waiting on the host. There you go. Oh,
As soon as we see you, I'd love to welcome you to the Joint Appropriations Committee. There we go.
there we go. Can you hear me?
We can.
Good. Thank you. I know it's getting a little late in the day there. I'll run through this and then answer any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. My name is Chris Rodkey. I am a Fremont County resident here for about 9 years now. I've got I'm officially retired, but just in way of background and understanding along the lines of some of these issues, I've got decades of program management and process improvement experience at companies such as United Technologies, GE, Honeywell, and United Airlines. And I want to maybe start, since the WBC group invoked his name. Peter Drucker also said, management is doing things right and leadership is doing the right things. Based on my review of project documents and especially benefit summaries provided by WBC, neither of these things is being done very well by that group. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here today. I've sent some review notes on these projects to committee members today. I apologize to some of you. I didn't grab all the emails. I'm happy to share those. But based on that review, I feel significant change is needed before further funding, and certainly a lot of funding, is considered. My opinion and ask of the committee is to dramatically reduce the size and potentially structure of the organization. I think we need to limit to far fewer programs any one organization is tasked with. Pick those that have clear or clearer ROI for taxpayers, deliver on those, measure the results, and all the while make every aspect of the operation truly transparent to the public. I can tell you, as of this AM, this morning, project details are available to the public only through a public records request. That makes it difficult, not timely, and frankly usurps the public's right to know in time to have any influence. I've heard a lot of comment about public engagement, and we'll cover more of that. I've got a few examples to share with everybody, both those telling us about lack of engagement and that the public doesn't show up, and I can help with that a little bit. But before we get to that, I think every applicant for funds managed by WBC or the other agencies and groups here today should have first gone to private lenders, venture capitalists, or friends and families. And I'm not talking about the pure infrastructure projects. Clearly, that needs to be separated, and you folks are, I think, realizing that this mix that goes on is hampering some of the progress in both fronts or on both fronts. My opinion is that states, counties, towns should not be in the business of loaning money, and absolutely not be in the business of granting taxpayer money to select private entities. There's a lot that goes on to renovate buildings, put infrastructure in place, et cetera. But throughout the portfolio, There's a slew of private companies, named private entities, that enjoy the bulk of these taxpayer dollars, and it just doesn't feel right to me. Moving on to public engagement again. I had some prepared notes, but in hearing some of the comments about the public not showing up, it struck me as a better use of my time if I just give you a couple examples. So my county commissioner agenda shows public comments at the beginning of the meeting. Great, maybe, but then there are all of these agenda items, many of which get voted on during the meeting. There is no public comment after each item. And not knowing you folks, and I know this is going to poke at the committee a little bit here, or maybe the LSOs, but your agenda for this meeting includes a note at the bottom that says, in accordance with Management Council policy, the opportunity for public comment will also be provided upon the conclusion of each topic. This is exactly what we need to have at all levels of government: public comment and engagement after each item, and especially before votes are taken on anything that impacts us. More so, I would argue that anything that involves large expense of public dollars should be put out into a public comment period. Whether it's towns like Pavilion, where I am right now, or Lander, or county, or anywhere else, it should be put out for public comment. You'll get public engagement if the public is able to engage. It's a waste of time in many respects for the public to attend some of these meetings when they don't get to talk or respond to things that are being voted on. In the moment they're being voted on. And then when they try to find the documents, they're met with, albeit valid, statutes around public records. You can't get some of the basic details of what's going on. So it's very frustrating for some of the public to try to engage. Anyway, a little bit of personal experience in trying to be a good member of the public and engage in what you all are doing. So I feel again that you folks and everywhere else, and as you restructure, rejigger, reinvent whatever you decide here relative to the WBC and their related teams, I think you should require wide and deep public comment on each agenda item before the voting is done, and that public comment periods are open for large expenditures. There was a comment earlier about the public not engaging. If there's not engagement, we're doing something wrong. I've delivered large, tens of millions of dollars of programs. I couldn't turn on software, or I couldn't turn on a manufacturing line or anything else that we did if I didn't engage the stakeholders. Our stakeholders here, with everything we've talked about today and everything that WBC and these other agencies are involved in, is the public. If the public doesn't know about the $20 million project going on and they haven't engaged in the same way that they know about the 4th of July parade and Frontier Days and everything else going on, we're not quite doing it right, is my opinion. So in the end, I won't keep rehashing what I've said. I will close by adding a comment to one of the other presenters, and Ashley, and I think it was Jeremiah, provided a lot of good information. I want to comment, though, on one of the things that he said. He mentioned loss can be a win and a learning moment, is what I took it as. Yes, for sure. But
I would argue that we need to use an approach that's referred to as failing fast. We can't spend tens of millions of dollars and be at the almost goal line and then announce that we failed. We need to be smarter about project management, which includes engaging the public as our core stakeholders. That's it. And I will try to answer any questions if anybody has any.
All right, questions for Mr. Rodkey? Mr. Rodkey, I sure appreciate you being here, especially for, applying your expertise to what we've been discussing today. I also appreciate your comments about public comment and engagement. And I agree with you that we need to work harder at all levels of government. And it's frustrating to me when I see elected officials that buck that system in an effort to just get the job done without public comment. So I think you can see that this committee is really committed to getting the public engaged, not just in what we're doing, but what this agency is doing. We'd like to see more of the taxpayers represented on the board, for instance. And we would certainly like to see elected officials having some oversight on what this agency does. And I think I've heard you real loud and clear on the limiting the scope until we make sure we're doing something right before we expand and go further. And I think we've got some ideas on how we can do that, especially by separating those public improvement efforts from things where we're dealing with the private sector. And I also appreciate your comment about private sector investment should have already exhausted all opportunities within the private sector before coming to government. And those words are well stated and well received here on this committee. So thank you.
Well, good. Thanks for saying that. And I feel that there's a good chance of some change. Thank you. And I would urge you, I know you've got people paid to look at these things. I would urge you to engage the public and there's a lot of expertise out here in a lot of different areas that could weigh in and help on all fronts.
And thank you again for reaching out. I look forward to reading your email as well.
You're welcome.
All right, Ms. Vaughn.
The last person I have online is Lucas Wall.
All right, Mr. Wall.
Hi there. Can you see me?
We can in a
Perfect.
tiny little picture in a picture. There we go.
Okay.
Welcome to Joint Appropriations Committee. Now we can see you.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me. My name's Lucas Wall. I'm a raised Wyoming citizen here in Laramie. Just graduated recently from the University of Wyoming, and was one of the recipients of the market expansion grant through the Wyoming Business Council. And so we, as well as a couple other students from the University of Wyoming, founded a company called Maypow, which is a mouthwash that spun off from some of the research we were doing here that actually helps prevent cavity development onto surfaces. And so we took that research and have now developed a mouthwash. But we used the market expansion grant initially just as a way. We were able to attend a national dental conference. We were able to kind of present our product in front of thousands of dentists, and as a result, we were able to get our product and our samples into hundreds of dental offices across the nation just from that one conference, which wouldn't have been possible without that grant. And so as a result, what we've been able to do is really grow as a company. Our sales continue to grow each month. We've brought on interns from the University of Wyoming that've got real experience within our company. And we continue to grow as a result. And so don't have anything fancy planned, but I just wanted to testify on the impact the Wyoming Business Council has had on our company and our ability to be able to attend a conference like that. And that's helped our company grow. So I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you. Stick around. We may have some questions for you, Mr.
Okay.
Wall. Are there any questions for Mr. Wall? Mr. Wall, I've got a couple. First of all, it's very inspiring to see a young man that has worked with his colleagues and developed a new business, and we're glad that the Wyoming Business Council has helped you to get that really off and rolling. Two things I'd like to know. Number one, do you have a vision for where your company is going to be 3, 4, 5 years from now? And number two, do you happen to use coal in this product? We'd really like to know if you're.
Good question. So the first question is related to that. So we're currently here at the Wyoming Technology Business Center in Laramie. We have a space here, and so we do plan to stay here the next year for sure. And then eventually we want to move into our own production space. So we have a production space here as well as an office. But as you know, I'm sure the lease here in the incubator is temporary. It's meant for companies to move on. So we do intend to stay in Wyoming, preferably Laramie, because that's where we're all from. And that makes it easiest. So the lab spaces here are pretty limited in Laramie. They do exist. We hope to stay here. It's going to just depend on the building infrastructure. So currently, at this incubator space, we have a lab space where we can do production and testing. And then once we move out of here, we hope to stay in Laramie, but it's really just going to depend on what the available spaces are going to be, which is limited here in Laramie. So, and second off, no coal.
Well, I hope you'll consider robotics as you go into manufacturing. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate your testimony. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Ms. Vaughn, do we have anyone else? Okay. With that, I think unless the committee has something else they'd like to discuss, we'll go ahead and adjourn for the evening, and we'll be back here tomorrow. Those of us who are planning on going to the prison and doing that tour, can I see a show of hands on who are planning on going with Director Shannon? Okay, looks like we're 100%. We're ready to go, Director Shannon. All right, thank you very much, all of you, for being here today.